Okay, good morning, Michael and Miguel. I see both of you have joined us. Michael, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself, and if you can bring up your camera, if you've got one there, that we can just do a check real quick.
There's a test. Can you see me?
Stand by just 1 second. If you can go ahead and, let's see. I do hear you. I don't see you yet. There we go. Now I see you. Yes, everything looks good for you. And Miguel, if we can go ahead. Also, Michael, go ahead and you can turn off the camera and leave yourself muted since you're not involved in our first meeting. And Miguel, if you can go ahead and check your microphone, and if you could bring up your camera too, please.
I should have it off, correct?
Well, during the meeting, yeah, but I'm going to go ahead and just check and make sure everything's working. I can hear you fine. If you can just turn your camera on just momentarily, we'll check that, and I can have you turn it back off. There we go. Beautiful. We see you just fine. Great. Thank you. Yeah, you can go ahead and turn it back off and mute yourself, and we're all set.
You got it.
Okay, good morning, everyone. The time is 9 a.m. I call to order the November 4th, 2020 Executive Committee meeting of the Contractor State Licensing Board. My name is David Del Torre. I'm the Board Chair and Executive Committee Chair. Today, all 5 of the board committees are meeting. As we will be moving from one committee meeting to the next, we will have board members transitioning between meetings. Please note that only board members who are members of the standing committee may participate in the committee meeting. Other board members who are in attendance may observe but cannot ask questions or participate in the discussion. Committee members, in order to mitigate any potential bandwidth issues, I want to encourage use of video cameras for committee members only while your committee meeting is in session. All others may join in by audio until your respective committee meeting begins, then kindly join in by video. If any problems arise from the use of video, we'll switch over to audio only. Any questions on that? Okay, see none. When you would like to comment at any time throughout the meeting, please select the raise your hand icon in the WebEx application. I will call on committee members to speak. When called upon, please unmute yourself, and when finished, return to mute. You will also need to click on the raise your hand icon to lower your hand. Joining us today is Registrar David Fote, Chief Deputy Registrar Tanya Corcoran, CSLB staff, and our board legal counsel, Jason Hurtado. Please confirm committee member attendance and roll call. Felice? Rick, is there some?
I'll jump in here, Felice. We're having some audio problems. It's got a digital garbled human. I tried the option to change your audio and call in, but I can go ahead and call the roll for this meeting. David Del Torre?
Here.
Susan Granzella?
Here.
Hi, thank you. If you can bring your camera up, Susan, please. Mary Teichert?
Here.
Thank you. And if you can bring yours up as well. And Johnny Simpson?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Johnny. If you could bring your camera up. Okay, Mr. Chair, we do have all members present.
Thank you. Next is agenda item B, our public comment section. This item is provided for public comment pertaining to items not on the agenda. To allow this committee enough time to conduct its full schedule of business, I will be limiting public comments to 3 minutes apiece. Please note that state law prohibits committee members from discussing any matter brought up during public comment. We are also not allowed to act on any item not on the agenda. If you want the committee to discuss a topic not on the agenda, you can ask us to consider placing that issue on the agenda of a future meeting. If you have an application, complaint, or disciplinary charges pending before the board, we ask that you not discuss the details of your case or pending complaint. Committee members are not permitted to receive evidence or information that is not part of the administrative record in the case. If your comments are related to a specific agenda item, you can make your comments now, but you may want to wait until that item comes up for discussion. We will ask for public comment before acting on any item. Rick Lopes is our host and moderator today. He will be assisting us by monitoring the public teleconference line. Is there any public comment?
Mr. Chair, nobody has indicated any public comment at this time.
Thank you. Any committee members have any an item they would like to place on a future meeting agenda? Okay, see no hands. We'll move on. Next is agenda item C. Presentation of certificates of recognition. Today we are recognizing CSLB's Public Affairs Chief Rick Lopes. After 16 years of service to CSLB, Rick has accepted a position as Assistant Commissioner for the Department of Real Estate. Rick's last day with the CSLB is this Friday, November 6th. I will now read the certificate of recognition that has been provided to Rick. Rick Lopes has led CSLB's Public Affairs Office for the past 16 years, and his contributions are numerous. Rick was instrumental in the expansion of the very successful Senior Scam Stopper program and new online license applicant workshops. He took the lead on our media efforts and outreach in response to the disasters throughout the state. His innovative social outreach programs, creation of industry bulletins, issuing of press releases, conducting media events, and responding to media inquiries, and establishing partnerships has been outstanding. Rick played a key role in bringing CSLB into the digital age with things like live broadcasts of all board and committee meetings and developing our social media and web presence. Rick will be greatly missed at CSLB. Now, before I ask if anybody would like to make a comment, I would. Rick, I just want to say that you've always conducted yourself in a professional and a calm manner. You've always been approachable and accessible. So I want to thank you for that and wish you the best in your new endeavor.
Thank you.
Any other board member like to comment at this time? You're on mute, Susan. There you go.
I can read.
I wanted to echo that. I'm sorry, did you call on me?
No, Johnny, hold on. Susan was on mute. Proceed, Susan.
I just wanted to say thank you, Rick, for all the service that you've given to the board members, obviously to CSLB as a whole as well. But I remember when I joined, the first board meeting was the night of that horrific storm in Berkeley where we all almost crashed on the way down. I had no idea what it was going to be like, but you took the time to welcome me into the group, and you've always been a source of great information, and it's been a pleasure seeing the digital and all of the other programs that you've developed, plus seeing you on TV with these district attorneys taking care of the disaster victims. So thank you for your service, and we'll miss you.
Thank you.
Johnny.
Yeah, Rick, I just wanted to say, over the years, I just have appreciated you very much, man. You're extremely knowledgeable and always look to you for all the help. And, just what a nice guy, man. What a great guy to get to talk to. Always upbeat, man. So I really appreciate you. And I want to thank you for all you did to help us out and help our committees. And, just see the work you do. I'm just so impressed. And congratulations and good luck in your new endeavor, man. I hope it all works out great for you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comment from the committee?
I wanted to add that I'm new to the board, but I've really appreciated, Rick, all of your help in the onboarding and making this whole thing simple. I think all of us have been taken by surprise and having to deal with a virtual universe this year in a way we never imagined, and you just made it much simpler. So thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, then is there any public comment?
Gonna put me to work now. Hold a second. Let me look real quick here. I was engrossed in all the comments, and thank you very much. No public comments.
Okay. We will now move to agenda item D. The fee study conducted by CPS HR Consulting. The update and summary begins on page 11 of your packet and is followed by the fee study. As board chair, I appointed Vice Chair Susan Granzella and Board Secretary Mary Tykert as a two-person advisory committee to review the fee study. I understand that on October 16th, 2020, Susan and Mary met with CPS representatives and CSLB staff to review and discuss the study. The study lays out recommendations to maintain sufficient funding over the next 5 years. I found the study to be informative and look forward to hearing from Susan and Mary. Susan and Mary, the floor is yours.
Okay, I'll go first. I wanted to, the first thing I wanted to say is that, it was the report itself was really well done. It was laid out. It was a history of CSLB. I think it's also interesting for our new board members because it lays out the foundation of why we did this report and where we stand today. I thought that was really helpful. And if you'll remember on the June 5th meeting, what we did, Dave and I presented the financials where our reserve was under, I think it was 1 month, what is required by, what is good practice by DCA. It had to do with fees, fee discussions, fee increases. And so what we informed everyone is that there was a study that we had contracted with CPS to do. Now, some background about CPS that we learned during this review was that they they've worked many times with DCA. They just completed a very similar study, just like what we have. In other words, can we justify raising these fees for the medical board, also a large board? And that, remember, anything that we do on this level will ultimately have to be approved. So the fact that we're working within the approved ways of DCA, I think, is really helpful. So on the update and the summary starts on page 11, and then their report begins on 13. And then Mary and I met. We went through the entire report. We suggested some changes, which they did make. And in essence, if you hadn't had a chance to read the entire thing, if you take a look at page 55, in essence, what the report recommends is that we separate the license, the B, with a corporate sole owner and non-sole owner. And on 55, there are listed the fees that we have, the current regulatory fee, what the statutory fee could be, and the increase. And the reason they put these in for the fee levels were to be able to incorporate the fee levels along with the 7.1 expense reduction Dave and team promised last June. It's in here, it's in effect, so that their projected budget appears on page 57, and that is the projected growth budget with the recommended fees. So there are fee increases and then the expenditures, and that we would be able to build up the reserve over a period of time to 4.4, which is in good practice within any business. And so the sole owner versus non-sole owner also take into account when we're looking at this The remodeling contractor classification is anticipated to bring in about $625,000 a year. It's not included in here because we can't bank on it, as well as the $500,000 savings by moving our testing to another environment, and that's not included in here. So that would increase our revenue over a period of time if both of those were successfully implemented. So when we went through this, you can see in here all of the justification. It's really well done, but the justification for the sole owner and the non-sole owner differentiation is that it takes staff a longer period of time. There are more hurdles. There are more steps. And so as we were looking at this, Mary and I were talking about financially appropriate estimates, and we had them change some the headings in a column so we can understand them. But from my perspective, it is a valid study for us to move forward and take this to the board in December. I approve from the financial standpoint here. Now what I would like to do is turn it over to Mary for her analysis on her opinion about this financial analysis, as well as her unique knowledge of the industry and what is appropriate, what we can look toward at these fee increases. So, Mary?
Thank you, Susan. And so following up on Susan's comments, I think everything she said kind of outlines the depth with which we've both reviewed this material and had good discussions with the consultants who prepared it. One of the perspective items was the significant increase that these fees would represent for non-sole owner contractors. So two kind of frameworks that I think we can consider. One is that we don't take this lightly, because I think California is a costly place to do business and contracting is a costly enterprise. So this is something we have to seriously consider, which is exactly what we're doing in this format. And then second, to put it in perspective, this amount of money is less than most of us pay for association fees for the AGC or United Contractor. Some of the other costs of doing business as a contractor are at or higher than this level. So if you compare the value of having a contractor's license to the value that we get from some of the other investments that all contractors or a lot of contractors in California make who are not sole owners, this seems completely reasonable. I'd also add that it's specifically of value for larger contractors to help encourage and support smaller contractors to be licensed. Not only does it help maintain the standards for the industry, but also most of us need subcontractors or specialty folks that do particular items. And so having this kind of increase for the non-sole owners allowed us to maintain a baseline level for the sole owners that I think helps encourage licensure. One of the challenges that we all have is if people, we certainly have a great enforcement arm and some sticks relative to folks avoiding being licensed. But the other side of that is also not making it prohibitive for sole owners to get licensed. And so the combination of having it be a reasonable amount of money for a large contractor to pay and also supportive of having smaller contractors not have a big increase and hopefully that thereby promoting them getting licensed, we felt like was an appropriate balance. So it's not easy to decide to increase fees. However, to Susan's point, the whole intent of this is to help the CSLB maintain some fiscal responsibility. And we think this is a pretty fair way to do it.
And I would like to add, I didn't mention earlier that these fees would go into effect if we were successful in taking this through in July of 2021. Now, there are certain steps that would have to take place. And Dave, would you like to explain that, or shall I summarize, or shall we have Chief Jay tell us what would be in store for us if the board were to consider this seriously in December?
Thank you, Susan. Chief Jay has been working very hard in preparing to answer that question, so I think we'll turn it over to him.
Okay, good.
Well, thank you, Mike Jemnetsky, for taking this.
Good morning, everybody. Mike Jemnetsky. I work for the legislative division for our new members on the call. Yeah, just real quickly, I wanted to do a timeline of what we're looking at here. So today is obviously November 4th, and the executive committee is reviewing and discussing this study for consideration for full board approval. That's what we're doing today. We have a tentative meeting December 10th for the full board to review and discuss this study. Pending approval of this study by the full board, that is when staff will request authority to prepare and pursue a legislative proposal for a bill that would take that would amend our statute, our fee statute. Have the legislature amend our fee statute of 7137 of the Business and Professions Code. Then we have between December 10th, assuming the board authorizes staff to do so, we have between December 10th and kind of early January 2021 to seek authorship for inclusion of any of these fee study recommendations in a legislative bill or a budget trailer bill, whichever may occur as appropriate. We still need to work with DCA and agency on what folks want to see from boards as far as fee studies and budget bills, fee bills go. So legislative bill or budget bill by the end of January 2021, we would obviously keep you posted. That leaves us basically the rest of the calendar year 2021 to see what happens with this budget trailer bill or legislative bill. As Susan mentioned, maybe July 2021, if this is a budget trailer bill, we don't know, or September 2021, if this is a policy bill. Susan did mention that the medical board did use these same consultants, and they did get a bill through in a policy bill to raise their fees. And if anybody is interested, it is AB 3330. It was approved by the governor September 30th of 2020 to take effect January 1st of 2021. So that if anybody want to take a look at what we're trying to do, take a look at AB 3330. So assuming that we have success in a budget trailer bill or a policy bill in the year 2021, we would be looking at a January 2022 effective date for that legislation. Now, CSLB, if we do have the ability to enforce these new fees January 2022, we would begin assessing them on our renewals on that date. But as everybody knows, our renewals go out a couple of months in advance. So we would take our January queue of renewals that are due in March and start charging that fee. So all of that means that starting March 2022, we strongly hope to begin assessing the new fees. I hope that was clear and I can answer any questions.
Any questions?
Thank you, Mike.
Okay. Thank you thank you, Susan, Mary, and Mike for that report. We appreciate the work you've done. CPS will present the study of the full board at the December 10th, 2020 meeting. Mike Jamensky, please provide the next steps. Specifically, if board approves the fee study, he already went through it. So is there any comment is there any comment from the committee? Rick, any public comment?
No public comment at this time.
Okay, great. As discussed, CPS will present the study of the full board on December 10th, 2020 meeting. If a committee member would like to make a recommendation, the fee study be forwarded to the full board for consideration. Please state your last name followed by the motion.
This is Johnny. I'd like to make a motion to present the study to the full board.
Is there a second?
Second?
Was that Mary?
Yes, it was. Thank you.
So it's been moved in second. Is there any comment from the committee? Any public comment? Rick?
No public comment at this time.
Okay, great. So it's moved in second. Felice, please take roll call. I think Felice has been having problems with her audio.
I tried calling in on the phone here, so we were trying to do this without testing. But Felice, if you're able to go ahead and try doing the roll call. If not, I'll jump in and do it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. David Delatorre?
Yes.
Susan Granzilla?
Yes.
Johnny Simpson?
Yes.
Mary Tykert?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now we'll move over to item E, CSLB's Mentorship and Career Development Program. CSLB New Mentorship and Career Development Program. An overview is provided on page 75 of your packet. It is my understanding that staff initiated this effort and continue to be engaged in the development of the program. I will now turn it over to Registrar David Foat and Chief of Administration Mike Meliza to present to the committee. David, Mike.
Thank you, Chair Delatorre. Just for some background, for a number of years, the board has been supportive of elements in place to attract people to work for the Contractors Board and to give our employees the tools they need to compete for promotional opportunities here at CSLB or other government agencies. They've included outreach at job fairs. We have a weekly email update of available CSLB jobs. We have job shadowing, establishing training and development positions, and permitting staff to attend training in-house at CSLB as well as at the Department of Consumer Affairs. We have many staff today in leadership roles that have worked their way up the career ladder. I don't know if you all are aware that Tanya Corcoran started her state career as a student assistant, and I started mine as an investigator for the Contractors Board. This topic has come out into the spotlight over the summer with our enforcement staff. I was approached by one of our special investigators in our SWIFT unit, and he had ideas on how we could build upon our previous recruitment and development efforts. It's a very timely topic because approximately a quarter of our workforce, or 100 of our staff, you might say, are over 55 years in age. So they're at the retirement age, and we need to consider succession planning to fill behind the staff when they do retire. As with any successful program, we needed to identify somebody to be in charge of it, to serve in that leadership role. And we're very fortunate that our Chief of Administration, Mike Meliza, not only volunteered, but he's really stepped up and he's taking charge of this program. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike now to update us regarding career development activities. So Mike.
Thank you, Registrar Foat, and good morning, Chair Delatorre and members of the Executive Committee. So as my update will begin on page 75 of your committee packet. As Registrar Foat discussed, CSLB is developing a series of programs to assist all employees with their career development goals and to provide them with tools for upward mobility. So to assist employees in all aspects of their career, CSLB is establishing a career development and mentorship program. So this program will help retain and promote CSLB's talented and motivated employees. These programs will help employees enhance their skills in their current roles, navigate organizational ladders, gain personal insights into their strengths and areas of potential growth, and sharpen their ability to pursue career advancement when opportunities arise. So in addition to a formal mentorship program, a formal mentorship program will provide employees one-on-one mentorship to help build networks and to receive career-related support, advice, and encouragement. So CSLB's executive staff and career development mentorship program steering committee held a kickoff teleconference meeting on September 15th of 2020 to review broad program goals. And I'd like to add that the steering committee is comprised of staff representing each of the CSLB divisions, and we meet weekly to discuss and build the program. So on October 8th, just last month, the steering committee sent a survey to all CSLB staff. It's a little over 400 staff that we have here to solicit ideas and get feedback about the program. This survey included questions about what type of career assistance would be most helpful. It includes resume writing, interview preparation, training on specific fields of work, opportunities to learn more about other divisions within CSLB, job shadowing, formal one-on-one mentorship, and so on. The survey also included an open-ended question for staff to share other ideas that they might have. I'm pleased to report that 100 staff had responded to the survey. That's a response rate of 27%. That was a very high survey response rate. Of those who responded, about 75% of the respondents indicated an interest in some type of career development and mentorship program here at CSLB. So it's a very strong response there. The biggest interest is the opportunity to learn about other divisions. And then the other areas of interest included those areas that I discussed earlier: job shadowing, interview preparation, additional training in their specific field of work, and so on. These responses will assist the committee to develop the program in a way that prioritizes the needs of the staff. So, in fact, we're going to be meeting later this week. We meet weekly, and we'll start building the program based on the feedback that we got from the staff. So that's all I have to report for now. Are there any questions in regards to the career development and mentorship program?
Any committee questions? Questions from the committee? Okay. Well, Dave, Mike, thank you for that.
Welcome.
Rick, is there any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to agenda item F. It's on page 79. There's an update on selecting a consultant to study which CSLB license classifications should install battery energy storage systems. I will now turn it over to Chief Administration Mike Meliza to provide an update.
Thank you again, Chair. So the little background. So at its December 12th, 2019 meeting, the board directed staff to retain an outside consultant to study the appropriate contractor classification to install solar-paired battery energy storage systems. On March 4th, 2020, CSLB published a request for proposal to contract with a consultant for this study with a submission deadline of May 6, 2020. On April 30th of 2020, the California Department of Finance issued Budget Letter 20-11 that, among other things, precluded departments from entering into new service contracts. However, on May 11th of that year, CSLB submitted a formal request that a consultant contract be exempt from the budget letter prohibitions. And on June 4th, the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency approved that exemption request. So then we were able to move forward with the RFP. The steps in the process of selecting the consultant followed requirements set forth by the state contracting manual rules and were conducted by the Department of Consumer Affairs alongside the CSLB evaluation team. So it was a three-phase evaluation process for this RFP. The proposals meeting the RFP requirements underwent, again, a three-phase evaluation process by the evaluation committee. So the evaluation committee consisted of Registrar Dave Fote, Tanya Corcoran, our Chief Deputy Registrar, and myself, Chief of Administration, Mike Meliza, for the first two phases. So during the first phase, the evaluation committee reviewed the technical written proposals and through consensus arrived at a single score for each of the evaluation criteria. This occurred on August 17th and August 18th. Any bidder receiving the minimum technical score proceeded to phase 2. So the second phase was based on an oral presentation from each bidder. Then we held that online via video conferencing to ensure social distancing on September 3rd, 2020. Successful proposals advanced to phase 3. So phase 3 involved DCA granting a cost component score based on total project cost, which concluded on September 9th of 2020. So DCA awarded the contract to the bidder who accumulated the highest final score that included the technical, the oral presentation, and the cost component. On September 11th, 2020, DCA issued a notice of intent to award to the winning bidder, which is the University of California at Berkeley. As required, this notice was physically posted at DCA and at CSLB headquarters and online at fiscal.ca.gov. CSLB took additional measures of posting the notice on CSLB's website on the Energy Storage System page. CSLB waited for DCA to determine if there were any protests to this notice during the required 5 business day protest period. no protests were filed. So currently DCA is working on drafting and executing the contract with the University of California, Berkeley. It does take some time to do that. The tentative contract dates were targeted for November 1st through February 28th. However, we've passed those dates and we're going to adjust those dates accordingly. And once the contract is reviewed, approved, and executed by DCA, we'll have those exact dates. But the contract term is a 4-month term. So that is all I had for the update on the ESS RFP. If there's any questions, I can take those now.
Okay, Mike, thanks again for that quick update. Are there any committee questions?
I do have a question. And maybe I missed this part, when will you know when the date of the start of the contract, when it is executed both by DCA and UC Berkeley?
Yes, DCA will notify us as soon as, right now they're just drafting the contract. And then once they get close, DCA and UC Berkeley will decide on an actual start term date. And once that's done, and once the contract is actually signed by both parties, they will notify us of the start date. But they'll have an idea before that, and they'll let us know accordingly. And we're in constant communication with the department on the drafting of the contract. So we can let you guys know as soon as we find out.
And the other question is, how did you come up with the 4-month duration for the contract? Was it a standard contract period, or was it based upon the requirements of the RFP?
Early on, when we were drafting the RFP and Registrar Vote and Chief Deputy Registrar Corcoran, you can chime in as well. But I think we were just thinking with staff and input from the board that we thought that the contract would take about 4 months, and we were kind of wanting to get it done as quickly as possible. We thought that would be a reasonable time to get that done. So that's really what the time frame was based on.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I guess picking up on that question, is there a provision, depending on what they find or how this proceeds, for modifications as we go down the road?
As far as time?
I think as far as time, but it seems like depending on their findings, we might not want to rush it, I guess is my point.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's always, there are mechanisms in place with the state contracting manual where we could amend, and it's not uncommon to amend contracts for time because the contractor or maybe the program needs more time. So yeah, that could be a possibility.
Okay, and is it possible to get a copy of the RFP? And I apologize if it's in these materials, but I haven't seen it.
Absolutely, we can get that to you today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other committee comments? Rick, is there any public comment?
At this time, I don't see any, but we do have 4 callers who are just on the phone. So if I could just take a moment to remind them, if you do have any public comments and you're only on the phone, if you can please raise your hand. To do that, you dial *3 and that'll raise your hand. And then when you're done, you can hit *3 again to lower your hand. So at this point, Mr. Chair, I do not have any public comment.
Great, thanks. So that was an informational item. No proposed actions required from the committee at this time. Okay, so we are on agenda item G, which is the review of the board member administrative procedure manual. You can find the manual beginning on page 83 of your packet. The proposed edits are intended to provide clarity on current board policy. I will turn it over to Tanya Corcoran to present.
Thank you. So the board member procedure manual, it provides a guide on important laws and regulations, board and departmental policies, and it also delineates the board member and staff responsibilities. The manual, we review it every few years. The board last reviewed the manual in April of 2018. You'll see that the proposed revisions are noted as underlined. to note any new language we've incorporated, strike out for language that's being removed. The proposed changes that you're seeing in your book today are really to clarify existing policies or roles, but I would like to touch on a few of those changes today. First is on page 105, and that's the Registrar Evaluation. The change noted is simply adding the verbiage as necessary, and the board has the discretion to evaluate the registrar at any time. But I wanted to raise this to the committee today because Registrar Fote and I on Monday had a meeting with the director, and that was with all department, board and bureau, executive staff, and executive officers. The department has recently made changes to the evaluation process and encourages the evaluations to be done annually. So we're planning for the evaluation to be conducted by the board at the March board meeting. DCA will provide the instructions. They take the lead on that, working with the board chair, and they'll work with myself on this, and we'll provide all that information out to board members prior to the March board meeting. So the other change I wanted to talk about is on page 111. And that is new language that was added, which is contact with parties to a complaint or investigation. So it is our current practice that the registrar or I will take the lead to respond and address these matters. But our goal is to respond within 24 hours of receipt of any inquiry or request sent to board members. We'll respond on your behalf, and we'll provide a copy of any correspondence that received and is addressed to you, and also our response. So I just wanted to highlight those 2 points, but I'd be happy to address any other changes or questions from the committee at this time.
Is there any committee questions or comments? Hearing none. Rick, is there any public comment?
No public comment on this item.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Tanya. Do I have a motion to approve the board member procedural manual?
This is Johnny. I would make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Send to the board.
And Susan, you seconded, right?
Did.
Okay. Elise, can we go down roll call? Actually, is there any further comment from the committee? Any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay, Elise, roll call, please.
David Delatorre,
Aye.
Susan Granzella,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
Mary Teichert.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, great. That brings us to agenda item H, the Information Technology Strategic Plan Update. The IT Strategic Plan objectives begin on page 119. I will now turn it over to CSLB's IT Chief, Jason Perez, to provide an update. Jason?
Good morning, and thank you. My name is Jason Perez, and I'm the IT Chief for Contractor State License Board. Today, I'll be providing a brief synopsis starting at page 119 of the IT Strategic Plan Objectives. I'll be reviewing each item, and starting with item 5.11, we'll talk about an online process to automate public sales requests. So this is CSLB IT completed the development and the release of the public data portal in June of 2019. Prior to this implementation, CSLB received requests from the public entities and also from consumers for data extracts from our master database. Now, consumers and public entities are able to retrieve this data through our CSLB website and accessing our public data portal. Item 5.12, an update to the website to offer e-payments. The IT division released the sole owner online renewal in April of 2020 and the home improvement salesperson renewal in July of 2020. This allowed contractors, and salespeople to electronically pay for their renewal through the CSLB website and process the renewal online. Currently, we are in the process of implementing the online citation, which is scheduled to be completed December of 2020. This will allow licensed contractors to pay citations online. Also, too, the original application, which was part of this, will be discussed in item 5.15. Continue on to item 5.13, which was to create an online e-signature. Also, too, with item 5.14, which was an online account, and item 5.15, which is a partnership with the Licensing Division and Public Affairs Office. I'll be discussing all three together, as we believe CSLB, one solution will be able to meet the expectations of all three objectives. Recently, the IT division demoed a vendor solution with DCA, Office of Information Services, to review a vendor solution that on an online cloud solution to enhance our licensing and enforcement solutions. Recently, the Board for Professional Engineers, Land Surveyors, and Geologists recently released this vendor solution in August. We will be contacting them to follow up on as they go through their recent deployment of this system. This solution, though, will also provide an identity access management system for Contractor State License Board. This will be for contractors and applicants, which will improve the convenience, allow for an online account option, and reduce the application process times. Moving on to item 5.16, which is a partnership with the Public Affairs Review and Update web contact to ensure public information presented to the public is accurate and accessible. Since July of 2019, CSLB annually certifies that the CSLB website is in accordance with American with Disabilities Act's requirements. All new publications and reports uploaded are ADA compliant prior to being published on our website. Additionally, the IT division has provided the Public Affairs Office and the ability to update license stats and web content. IT and the Public Affairs Office will continue collaboration moving forward to enhance the user experience through this objective. Item 5.17, mobile technologies to enhance efficiencies in the field staff. For field staff. This item has been marked completed. We recently issued out laptops, mobile devices, and portable printers to the Enforcement Division staff. And at this time, no additional technology requests have been received from the Enforcement Division. Item 5.18, the creation of a mobile app for available services. A mobile app is currently under review to ensure that this is a cost-effective solution. In the meantime, the IT division, while this assessment is going on, the IT division is continuously enhancing the CSLB website to be mobile-friendly when using a mobile web browser. CSLB has begun the initial discussions with another state's licensing contractor agency, who is also in a similar situation with providing a mobile-friendly web application for unlicensed activities. We'll be following up with them shortly. Moving on to item 5.19, an expansion of the public records and licensing information on the website. The IT division, licensing division, and the Public Affairs Office continuously collaborate, and CSLB has released the public data portal to access public records. All data that's available to the public and public entities fall in line with the Business and Professions Code, Section 27. Item 5.20, conduct needs assessments to determine requirements for new licensing enforcement computer system. CSLB has completed this assessment for our business modernization efforts, and we will continue to report annually to the legislature, and we have been since 2016, which is in accordance with Government Code Section 210.6, which requires CSLB to continuously review business processes and organizational change management activities as we assess a new licensing technology. From that assessment, CSLB has determined that our business modernization effort can be met through technology solutions that are currently available with DCA's and CSLB's portfolio. Item 5.21, implement SCORE 2.0's programming. SCORE, which stands for State Contractors Official Regulatory Exam System, is a application used by our testing unit within the licensing division for examination development and exam administration. However, with the recent signing of AB 3087 by Governor Newsom, the CSLB IT will be dedicating resources to the transition to a third-party vendor for exam administration. In addition, while this is happening in the year of 2021, IT division will dedicate another resource staff to the development portion of the exam development portion of the SCORE system. At this time, this concludes the update to the IT strategic plan objectives. I'm available for any questions.
So are there any questions from the committee?
Yes, I do have a question.
Susan?
Item 5.21, the implement SCORE 2.0 programming. Is this related, forgive me if I didn't see the connection, but is this related to the testing we do on the classifications for the contractors?
Yes, it is.
So this is our move within DCA to the third party, and now it's a strategic objective as well as it was the way we were moving toward anyway, correct?
Correct. So there's two aspects on this that the SCORE provides for us. One is the administration of the exam when we administer the exam. And then the second portion is for the testing group to develop the questions that we will administer during the exam. So it does both aspects. So we will be pushing the third-party administration will do the administration of the exam. However, we will still maintain the development of the questions in-house.
Oh, good. That was my second question. Okay, very good. Thank you, Jason.
Welcome.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the committee? Public comment. Rick, is there anybody care to comment from the public?
No public comment on this item.
Okay, great. So with that, we move on to agenda item I, the Administration Strategic Plan Update. The administrative strategic objectives begin on page 125 of your committee packet. I will once again turn this over to CSLB's Administration Chief, Mike Meliza, to provide an update. Mike?
Thank you, Chair. Again, page 125, we'll start with item 5.1. That item was to evaluate the use of in-house legal counsel to supplement current board counsel. We have a lot of work for our legal counsels. Happy to report that is completed. In June 2018, Department of Consumer Affairs assigned a second part-time legal counsel to assist CSLB with Public Records Act's requests and subpoena workload. And from what I understand, that has been a tremendous help. So that item is completed. Moving on to 5.2, execute a Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, with the Workers' Compensation Insurance Rating Bureau to provide a program to the Contractor State License Board to track workers' compensation policies. That one has been completed. Staff met with the Workers' Compensation Insurance Rating Bureau in April and May 2019. A process has been developed to share public workers' compensation information regarding C39 roofing contractors that can be expanded to other classifications as necessary. So no formal MOU is deemed necessary at this time. So that item is completed. Moving on to item 5.3, provide training on progressive discipline process to assist managers and supervisors in addressing performance issues here at CSLB. That has been completed. CSLB managers and supervisors attended a 2-day performance management training that was provided by DCA back in October of 2019. So that's been done. Moving on to item 5.4, provide team building and leadership training for managers and supervisors to make the management team more effective. That has been completed on January 23rd and 24th of 2019. CSLB managers and supervisors participated in a 2-day leadership training class titled the 21st Century Executive Leadership Challenge. So it was a fantastic class. That item has been completed. Moving on to page 126, top of the page, item 5.5, research a special investigative series. This one has been completed. This one was a heavy lift. A classification study performed by CPS HR Consulting resulted in the reclassification of existing non-sworn enforcement representatives 1 and 2 to the special investigator classification. The sworn enforcement representative 1 and 2 to investigator, and the enforcement supervisor 1, 2 to the supervising special investigator classification to oversee both sworn and non-sworn staff. Again, a lot of work with this one. I want to commend our staff here, especially Ingrid Witowski-Sedlar, who manages our personnel office, Tanya Corcoran, our deputy chief registrar, who worked really, really closely with DCA, the Human Resources Division over there, with CalHR, with the unions. There's a lot of work that made this happen, and from what I understand, it's very much helped our enforcement division with their recruitment. We're getting very, very high quality candidates to fill these positions now, and I think it's when we're going to be able to retain our very skilled staff. So great report there. So that's been completed. Moving on to item 5.6, pursue salary differentials in regions with higher living costs. This kind of coincided with the previous item, and this has been completed. The study that CPS HR Consulting did recommended that we move to the special investigator classifications and not seek the salary differentials. So we just follow that recommendation, and everything's been working great. So that's been completed. Item 5.7, standardize human resource processes to increase efficiency in regards to personnel matters. And a lot of this is just a lot of administrative cleanup on our part here within my personnel staff. We're on schedule. The target date is now July 2021. Staff is in the process of creating a supervisory section for CSLB's intranet, and we're just going to have some online tools for our staff. Tools such as FAQs, so frequently answered questions, and checklists will be uploaded to this section for supervisors to reference, so they can just get it whenever they need it. And of course, my staff will be there to help them out, but just additional tools that we can give them. So that's ongoing, but I don't see any problems with hitting that target date. Moving on to item 5.8, enhancing onboarding and orientation program for new staff, managers, and board members. We realize we fall short in a big way as far as orientation and onboarding for our new staff and all of the new board members. So we're working on that. We have a target date of February 2021, and this coincides with Public Affairs Objective 4.8, which I'm sure they'll be talking about later today. But it's on schedule. Staff is working with Public Affairs to develop content for our intranet. We're going to have some of these trainings and onboarding videos online, so that you can just, day one, or even before you even start, you can find out a little bit about our divisions, what CSLB does, roles here. So I'm very excited to see how that develops. Additionally, as I talked about earlier, we're establishing a mentorship career development steering committee. So that committee is working, and we're busy with that. So target date, February 2021, and I think we're going to be fine with that. Moving on to page 127, item 5.9, develop benchmarks for the hiring process in order to extend job offers and onboard new employees more quickly to avoid losing qualified candidates. The recruitment process for the state of California can be cumbersome, so we're just doing everything we can to streamline that process, and we've done that. We've mapped and documented the workflow of the current recruitment process to identify processing times and areas for more efficiency. The personnel staff worked very, very hard on that, and also working with the IT staff who helped us workflow that. And so yeah, that's been completed. And then the last item 5.10, review the budget quarterly to guide the board on resource allocation. I'm sure Stacey Paul, who's our budget manager, will talk more about that, but that's just an ongoing process. I know the state was moving to a different reporting system, Fiscal, and there were some issues about getting a lot of reports, but we're just continually reviewing the budget on a quarterly basis to help guide the board, you board members. And that's all I have to report as far as the strategic plan items for the administration division. If there's any questions, I could take that now.
Thank you for that, Mike. Are there any committee questions, suggestions? Hearing or seeing none? Rick, is there any public comment?
Yes, we do have one member of the public would like to ask a question. Mayra Gutierrez, if you can please go ahead and make your comment, please.
Oh, no, I don't want to.
Go ahead.
No.
Don't be
I don't know how to ask her.
Well, yeah, okay, maybe I'll just jump in then because she did actually send it to me as a chat message. So she's asked, her question has to go with regarding third-party testing. Who would be considered a third party and how do you choose who the third party will be?
I'm not sure if this pertains to any of the strategic plan items. Probably in the for the IT.
Yes, this is Jason. I think that question refers back to the exam administration, the third party, I believe.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Okay, so the selection of the third party vendor is done through a bid process. Currently, right now, our department already has a vendor on contract. We are evaluating current assessments of this vendor if it meets the needs of our testing administration.
Thank you. Mayra, is that okay? Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. That's the only public comment we have at this point.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that question. So this concludes the executive committee's business for the day. After we adjourn the executive committee meeting, we will have a short break to transition to the enforcement committee meeting, which will be led by enforcement committee chair Kevin Albanese. Is there any further business to come before the committee? Seeing none, I adjourn this meeting. Was I on mute all that time?
No,
Oh, okay, good.
no, we could hear you.
You're fine.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Do we want to just jump right into enforcement, I'm presuming?
I believe Dave said we were taking a short break.
Oh, I didn't hear that part. Okay.
Yeah, that's why. I don't know. You want to take a quick 10-minute break, 5-minute break?
I'll defer to the enforcement committee. If the enforcement committee is ready to go,
There you go.
and if staff's ready to go, I assume we get going. But if we need a break, let me know.
Can we do 5 minutes?
Sure. We'll call the meeting to order at call it 10:10. 8 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
You did it really well. That was awesome.
All right, I have 10:10. Do we have everybody here that we need to have here? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Perfect.
I'm here.
Yep.
Turn on our video.
All right, then I'm going to presume everybody is here that needs to be here. And good morning. The time is 10:10 a.m. I call to order the November 4th, 2020 Enforcement Committee meeting of the Contractor State License Board. I am Kevin Albanese, board member and Enforcement Committee chair. Please note that only board members who are members of the Enforcement Committee may participate in this committee meeting. Other board members who are in attendance may observe but cannot ask questions or participate in the discussion. Committee members, to mitigate any potential bandwidth issues, we ask that you we don't want to turn off video cameras, right, Rick?
No, the committee members should keep their cameras on.
Yeah, if you're on the committee, go ahead, keep your cameras on. Throughout the meeting, if you would like to comment, please use the raise your hand icon in the WebEx. If you need to, unmute yourself and jump in if we don't see that. If you do raise your hand through the WebEx, you will also need to use that icon to lower your hand. Well, this is our first Enforcement Committee meeting of the new fiscal year. It's also the first committee meeting for 2 new board members. I'd like to welcome them at this time. Don Giordano?
Giordano.
Get that right?
Very good.
Giordano. Don, who is from Palm Desert, was appointed by Governor Newsom this past August and is a specialty contractor member. Welcome, Don.
Thank you.
The other is Michael Mark. Michael is from Stockton and was appointed by the governor in September as a public member who represents labor. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
Also joining us today is Registrar David Fote, Chief Deputy Registrar Tanya Corcoran, Enforcement Chief Missy Vickery, and our board legal counsel, Jason Hirado. At this time, we will do roll call, and Felice, can you take us through roll call, please?
Kevin Albanese,
Here.
Don Giordano,
Here.
Diana Love, Diana,
She's on mute.
okay.
Can you hear me now? Here.
Michael Mark,
Here.
Marlo Richardson, Marlo, Johnny Simpson,
Here.
Nancy Springer.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful, Felice. Thank you so much. Next is Agenda Item B, our public comment section. This item is provided for public comment pertaining to items not on the agenda. To allow this committee enough time to conduct its full schedule of business, I will be limiting public comments to 3 minutes apiece. Please note that state law prohibits committee members from discussing any matter brought up during public comment. We are also not allowed to act on any item not on the agenda. If you would like the committee to discuss a topic not on the agenda, you can ask us to consider placing that issue on the agenda of a future meeting. If you have an application, complaint, or disciplinary charges pending before the board, we ask that you not discuss the details of your case or pending complaint. Committee members are not permitted to receive evidence or information that is not part of the administrative record of the case. If your comments are related to a specific agenda item, you can make your comments now, but you may want to wait until that item comes up for discussion. We will ask for public comment before acting on any item. To members of the public, if you joined us on WebEx and would like to make a comment at this time, either raise your hand or use the chat feature to send us a note that you would like to offer public comment. If you've joined us by phone and would like to make a public comment, please press *3 to raise your hand. This will be the same system throughout the meeting for public comment during each agenda item. Mr. Rick Lopes, congratulations on your departure. Bittersweet. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that, but I know I wasn't allowed to say that in the prior meeting. He is our moderator today, and he will be assisting us by moderating the public line. Do we have any members of the public who wish to address the committee or offer an agenda item at a future meeting?
Mr. Chair, no public comments at this time.
Fantastic. Do any committee members have an item that they would like to place on a future meeting agenda? Seeing and hearing none. The next is agenda item C. Please turn to page 139, as this is an update and discussion regarding our enforcement priorities. Particularly since we have 2 new board members joining us today, I'd like to give a summary of the state of the Enforcement Division. The Enforcement Division has been significantly impacted by budget restrictions, the pandemic, and wildfire disaster response. Staffing is a primary concern. The Enforcement Division currently has 25 vacancies. 17 enforcement staff have been redirected to contact tracing, and nearly 12 enforcement employees are working a reduced time base to address the demands of distance learning. This means a decrease in 48 enforcement positions available to address CSLB work. Given the excessive vacancies, a focus has been on filling the investigator position. I am happy to report that since July 1st, 2020, conversion of enforcement representatives to special investigators, it is common for CSLB to receive 100 qualified applications per position versus the 3 to 5 received prior. Moving on to complaint prioritization. At the June 2019 meeting of the board, the complaint prioritization guidelines printed in your packets was approved. Despite the process changes, the priorities addressing proactive and reactive complaints have remained unchanged. CSLB receives approximately 1,000 consumer filed complaints per month in one of the 2 intake and mediation centers, also called an IMC. The IMCs are staffed with program technicians and consumer service representatives, also called CSRs. To the new board members, you're going to learn there's a whole acronym library of all kinds of stuff, but nonetheless, there's your first 2, who triage the complaints. For less egregious complaints, the CSRs attempt mediation and are very successful. Between January 2020 and September 2020, the complaints settled in the Intake and Mediation Center, the IMC, resulted in over $16 million in restitution. Well done to the consumer representatives. For the non-egregious complaints with a financial injury of less than $10,000, the board approved a process change at the June 5th, 2020 meeting that would refer those complaints to an alternative dispute resolution, either to small claims court or to the surety bond for financial redress. Due to the decrease in incoming consumer complaint volume over the last 6 months, very likely attributed to the COVID-19, staff is able to use discretion when implementing this change, as consumers are generally not happy with this resolution. To date, only 37 complaints have had to have been referred to the alternative dispute resolution. The field investigators continue to conduct investigations into the more egregious complaints. In the early days of telecommuting due to COVID restrictions, enforcement leadership, in partnership with CSLB's Attorney General liaisons, conducted valuable training focused on remote interviewing techniques to ensure admissibility of the content into a hearing. Additional training provided by Cal OSHA was conducted in August of 2020, which focused on key COVID-19 prevention practices. Following the safety training, field investigators were given permission to return to the field depending on their comfort level. CSLB maintains a committed environment to working closely to committed to working closely with industry partners, compliance organizations, and other state agencies to address contractor law violations in the public works arena. Complaints that result from larger commercial public works projects often include high priority violations, such as inappropriate licensure, misuse of construction funds, labor law violations, or workers' compensation avoidance. SWIFT, CSLB's proactive enforcement division, was disproportionately affected by the restrictions implemented due to COVID-19, as well as the redirection of many of the staff to conduct contact tracing, as mentioned earlier. During the time when fieldwork was discouraged, staff increased investigations into advertisements using online marketplaces and social media to identify and issue administrative citations. Further, SWIFT has been instrumental in working on the declared disaster areas that have been ravaged by wildfires during the 2020 season. As you can see in your packet, staff have partnered with local law enforcement and other state agencies to disseminate materials to homeowners and place signs warning the victims of the risk of unlicensed and predatory contractors. To conclude this section, several board members, myself included, have been looking forward to participating in outreach to the fire victims. Public affairs and enforcement staff have been working with state agencies and local government officials to develop rebuild seminars that will provide consumers with information beyond what is provided to them at a local assistance center, and to educate them about the home improvement contract provisions so they're better informed when entering into a contract with a licensee prior to rebuilding their homes. This outreach will provide information beyond checking the license and verifying the presence of a workers' compensation policy. While these are two very important components in choosing a contractor, CSLB hopes that this next level of education will empower the consumer in these fire zones to reduce further victimization of those impacted. I look forward to being a part of these seminars moving forward. A further summary of responsive efforts will also be covered in the public affairs meeting that follows. This is an informational item only. No action is required by the committee. Would any committee members like to comment on the status update of enforcement? Seeing and hearing none, is there any member of the public that would like to comment? Oh, Nancy Springer, you got something, Nancy?
Yes, sorry, I was trying to find a little hand to raise my hand. I just, on page 140, when you were speaking to the low routine, high urgent, the guidelines that we're using now for the different complaints, we said we would monitor that. So I'm just curious, is it possible to get a breakdown of the type of complaints as they fit into those 4 categories of how many you're receiving?
This is Dave Fote. Yeah, we could do like a sampling. I think that would be helpful. We can also track them by the opening violation code. So if you'd like us to do that, maybe for 30 to 60 days, we could provide you that information.
I think that would be helpful just to make sure that, based on the complaints that you're receiving and then based on the way that we categorize them, that we are covering what we need to cover. So that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Sure, of course.
Mr. Chair, this is Rick. If I can just jump in, I'm being told that Marlo has joined us. She may be on the telephone. So if you don't mind, if I can just take a second and open up our phone lines just to see if I can find Marlo on this so she can participate. So if you can just stand by 1 second, please.
Absolutely.
Okay, Marlo Richardson, if you are on the phone, can you please go ahead and start speaking so I can find out where you are?
Marlo is here. Can you hear me?
Okay, good. All right, I found it. Did you have any comments for this item?
No comment.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, moving on to our next agenda item, which is item D. For the next agenda item, review, discussion, and possible action to amend CSLB's 2019 to 21 Enforcement Strategic Plan Objectives. I'm going to turn it over to Chief of Enforcement, Missy Vickery. You here, Missy?
No, hi, Kevin. This is Jesse Flores.
Okay, I wasn't sure if she was able to make it. Jesse Flores. Floor is yours, sir.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jesse Flores, Deputy Chief of Enforcement. I report to Missy Vicker, who is out today. Kevin, thank you for your comprehensive overview of the many accomplishments of the Enforcement Division, despite the challenges that we have faced over the last several months. Chair Albanese has covered many of the updates that pertain to the Enforcement Strategic Plan objective, but I would like to just quickly touch on a few and add some highlights. Beginning on page 149, item number 2.1, formalize the disaster response program for greater efficiencies and to improve response time. This item is completed for the most part. We have a plan in place as was addressed and as mentioned earlier. Public Affairs will expand on the work that has been done in the disaster areas. Additionally, a written draft of the plan is being put in place together by Public Affairs and should be available shortly. Item number 2.2, educate the public about the complaint and investigative process, as well as available resources for financial redress. As noted, new contact letters that more thoroughly describe the complaint investigative process were updated in June of 2019. These letters are sent out to each party upon receipt of the complaint. We are also partnering with PAO, Public Affairs, on a video that will educate consumers on how to file a complaint. Item 2.3, in partnership with Public Affairs, develop and implement a plan to identify opportunities to increase publicity concerning enforcement actions, including relaunch of CSLB'S Most Wanted feature. As previously reported, we have relaunched the CSLB'S Most Wanted feature on our website, and new suspects have been added as well as arrested. Upon commencement of the telecommuting due to COVID-19 restrictions, enforcement supervisors were encouraged to share complaint handling highlights with Public Affairs for potential development of press releases. This initiative resulted in press releases highlighting the Sheriff Monte investigated that resulted in criminal charges due to multiple violations declared in disaster areas. Chair Albanese also addressed 2.4 in detail and summary. Item 2.5, develop a program to improve complaint response by setting priorities and recognizing staff achievements. Supervising special investigators are required to submit a weekly report to enforcement leadership that includes highlights of the work being completed by staff. As a result of the comprehensive reports, we look forward to recognizing 3 of our members at the December 2020 board meeting. Item 2.6, partnership with Public Affairs Office and Licensing Division, create online courses and content to educate licensees. As you can see in your packet, the partnership with Public Affairs and Enforcement completed the building permit training video. And we are now in the beginning stage of developing a webinar on video to educate contractors and home improvement salespersons about registering and home improvement contract requirements. This is particularly very important in the solar industry where the large companies and brokerages do not always fully understand the requirement and the applicable laws and regulations. 2.7, provide training opportunities to improve morale and staff knowledge. Chair Albanese previously shared the great training programs that we have implemented in detail. Item 2.8, prioritize proactive investigation of license requirements, protect the public and licensed contractors by removing unlicensed contractors from the marketplace. Again, Chair Albanese shared that great work that SWIFT does and what we're doing to address the unlicensed activity. And in conclusion, item number 2.9, attend job fairs to promote employment opportunities at CSLB. Prior to the pandemic, CSLB staff attended 2 job fairs at Sacramento State University in September of 2019 and February 2020 to promote both CSLB vacancies as well as the path to becoming a licensed contractor. As Kevin noted earlier, the transition from enforcement representative to special investigator has improved the recruitment of those positions. This is exciting. Also, as you heard Mike Maliza mention about that candidate pool that we now get to select from has been enhanced so much that our interviews and our candidates are coming and we're getting great quality people coming forward to seek employment with the CSLB. We also additionally identified some enforcement staff who will be performing outreach in various communities as well as working with Public Affairs for virtual platform online. Okay, that's all. That concludes my update, Kevin.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jesse, for filling in for Missy. This, again, was an informational item. No action is required, but would like to see if there's any committee comment, committee member comment, or public member comment? Seeing and Rick, did you have somebody pop on?
No public comment here.
Fantastic.
Hey, Michael Mark might have his
I
hand
have
up.
my hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, Michael. I did not see that. Please, if that's the case, just unmute yourself and jump right in. Please go ahead.
All right. Yes, I had one question on item 2.4 in regards to social media and looking to see unlicensed contractors. Now, I guess my question is this: is it more of just looking at profiles to find individuals doing said work unlicensed, or are we looking for like sponsored posts of contractors who are unlicensed? Is that what we're doing? Does that make sense? The question.
Jesse, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. Yes, that actually, we're looking at all of that activity, any social media or any Facebook or all the social media content that includes whether someone's advertising or discussing whether or not they can be a contractor is being looked at by my enforcement team. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and I wasn't sure if there was a way to reach out to possibly these social media or companies and ask them to submit items to you directly. I don't know if that's something that we could do.
Do you want to add something, Dave? But I know that historically we have reached out and attempted to reach out, but yet here we are still. So we are actively pursuing these and doing the best.
If I could add to something, Jesse, Dave Fote. I know Rick Lopes may talk about a little bit during the Public Affairs Committee, but Public Affairs Office has been very strategic and diligent in reaching out to Nextdoor and a lot of different social media sites to try to educate them on license requirements. And we've had, for the most part, success. Where we haven't had a lot of success, though, would be to the Craigslist platform. But I think with this program has been successful because we routinely receive information from the public, industry partners and others regarding, say, a Facebook page where somebody is professing to have the ability to do work with employees, and yet they have no workers' comp or they have no contractor's license. The same thing with Nextdoor. When people are looking for a contractor and the neighbors say, well, I know somebody, and they provide names. Problem is that person that they provided doesn't have a contractor's license. So, from our standpoint, it's a real opportunity to, one, educate Nextdoor and some of these social media sites, but also to post information on these social media sites regarding license requirements, and then warn these folks that don't have a license. They can be brought into compliance. Depending on the level of evidence, we might issue a citation. So that's something our SWIFT unit has been able to focus on when they have been. We've been discouraging them from going out and performing their field work.
Thank you for that update.
Thank you very much, Dave and Jesse, and for the question, Michael. Any other comments from committee members or public?
No public comment.
Seeing and hearing none, there are no other items on the agenda for today. We are going to adjourn the enforcement committee meeting, and if Chair Love of the Public Affairs Committee would like to take a break, I'll leave that to her discretion. Do I have a motion to adjourn the enforcement committee?
Motion to adjourn. Johnny.
There is a motion and a second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Felice, can you call the roll, please? Kevin Albanese is an aye.
This is Tanya Corcoran. I'll jump in. We don't need to call roll. The motion is good enough, so we'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Fantastic. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Tanya.
Okay.
I'll turn it over to Chair Love.
Thank you. Do we want to take a few minutes break? I know there's some contractors out here. I don't want them to turn the blower on and you can't hear what I have to say. So maybe 5 minutes?
I'm okay with moving forward.
I'm ready.
Okay. Okay, is everyone ready to move forward then?
Yes.
Okay, well, good morning. And at this time, it is 10:33. And I will call the meeting to order, the meeting of the Public Affairs Committee. I'm Diana Love, the committee chair. Please note that only board members who are members of the Public Affairs Committee may participate in this committee meeting. Other board members who are in attendance may observe but cannot ask questions or participate in the discussion. Clara Goldstein, can you please call roll and establish a quorum?
Sure. Diana Love,
Here.
Kevin Albany,
Here.
Don Giarratano,
Here.
Michael Mark,
Here.
Marlo Richardson,
Here.
Johnny Simpson,
Here.
and Nancy Springer.
Here.
Okay, all committee members are here.
Thank you, Claire. For my chair's comments, I would like to note that today marks the final meeting for the chief of our Public Affairs Office, Rick Lopes. Rick has overseen the board's Public Affairs Office and all of our outreach efforts for the past 16 years. He starts a new chapter in his career next week when he takes over running the Communications Office at the California Department of Real Estate. I would like to congratulate Rick on his new role and to thank him for his 16 years and to also acknowledge the certificate of recognition that he was received earlier in this meeting. Well deserved. I know that other committee members have worked with Rick for much longer. If you would like to make any comments, please raise your hand and I'll be happy to call on you. Is there anyone that would like to say anything at this time?
Difficult.
Yeah, this is Kevin. I heard it in the earlier one, but anyway, Rick, I just wish you nothing but the best. You've been fantastic. Public Affairs lost two huge people, Rick and Jane, earlier in the year, and you guys you both did a fantastic job representing the board, representing us to consumers, which we are a consumer protection board, and it was a real honor working with you. Wish you all the best.
Thank you.
This is Nancy. I just like to say, Rick, it's been such an extreme pleasure, and I do look forward to continuing to work with you. It's your new position. I'm sure we can find a way to still connect. But just the past 6-7 years working with you, the response of you and your staff with the wildfire and the disasters has been incredible. The different publications you put out, the way that you've been working with the social media and staying on top of that, keeping the website. These meetings, the conference meetings, and giving us the how-tos and the step-by-step, and I'm kind of dealing with all of us. And then just, even speaking at one of our building official annual business meetings and networking with our group is such an impact. You made an impact with me, and I appreciate that, and with my group. And I wish you the best. And thank you for all you did for CSLB. You'll be missed.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, Rick, on behalf of this committee and everyone at CSLB, thank you for all of your contributions over the past 16 years. We wish you and your family all the best. And is there anything that you would like to say briefly, Rick?
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I would like to thank everybody, not only on this committee, but as everybody on the board. I made myself some notes and actually figured out that over the last 16 years, I've worked with 47 different board members. We've had more than 60 board meetings, probably another 20 public affairs committee meetings over the year, 3 registrars. I remember like yesterday when I was the newbie on the block, and board members have always been extremely supportive of the public affairs efforts. They understand the important role that we play and how a lot of the things we can do can help prevent complaints down the road and also help the consumers protect themselves. So there's been a lot of projects that we've done over the years, and you've noted many of those, and we'll talk about a few more of them during today's meeting. But the board, thank you for all of your support over the years, and to my staff, thank you for everything you've done too. We've had great staff over the years. I've been very proud of the fact that either everybody who's left my office since I've been here is either retired or gotten a promotion and gone somewhere else. So I take a lot of pride that we've been not only able to get good work out of them, but we've helped them grow in their careers. And so I'm really proud of that. And I do want to thank the registrar and the deputy registrar for all of their support over the years of our efforts. And I hope that will continue, and I'm sure it will continue down the road. And I'll just be across town, so I'm sure that we'll talk again in other situations, and I'm always around to assist. This is a place that's been close to my heart, and I'm still passionate about the consumer protection. So I'm glad that I'm going to be able to go to a different agency that has a very similar consumer protection goal. And I'm looking forward to the new challenge. And again, thank you for all of your support and well wishes.
Thank you, Rick. And moving into our next agenda item, which is item B, public comment. The public comment procedures are on page 159 in the meeting packet. The committee values public input as part of our consumer protection mission to allow us enough time to conduct our business. I'm limiting public comments to 3 minutes apiece. If your comments do not involve an item on today's committee agenda, this would be the time to make them. If you have a comment on one of our agenda items, please wait until we get to that item. We will give you a chance to address us at that time. There are a few other things to note. First, California law prohibits committee members from discussing any matters brought up during public comment. Also, we are not allowed to act on any item not on today's agenda. Finally, if you want the committee to discuss a topic on the agenda, you can ask us to consider placing that issue on a future committee meeting agenda. Members of the public, if you joined us on WebEx and would like to make a comment at this time, either raise your hand or use the chat feature to send us a note that you would like to offer public comment. If you joined us by phone and would like to make a public comment, press *3 to raise your hand. We will use the same system throughout the meeting for public comment during each agenda item. Rick, at this time, are there any members of the public who have requested to address the committee?
No, Madam Chair, no comments at this time.
Okay. I will move into item C, an update and discussion on CSLB disaster response to 2020 wildfires. This item starts on page 161 of your meeting packet. This has been our 4th straight fall where we have had a series of devastating wildfires around California. 5 of the 6 biggest wildfires in the state history have taken place since August. Fires this fall are responsible for at least 31 deaths, destroying or damaging more than 9,200 structures and burning more than 4.1 million acres of land. CSLB dedicates a significant amount of resources to its post-disaster response, with a mission of protecting wildfire survivors from being victimized a second time by unlicensed or predatory contractors. Rick Lopes is going to share with us a summary of our efforts this fall, as well as how our post-disaster efforts since 2017 have helped keep down the number of disaster-related consumer complaints we have received. Rick, can you give us a disaster report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We'll be starting on page 163, and as the Chair mentioned, it is a high priority for the board to focus on post-disaster, and we have dedicated significant resources over the years, especially over the last 3 years where the number of wildfires has really jumped. But as you can see, I'm not going to go through all of our history, but it's been well over 30 years that CSLB has really made an effort on responding to post-disasters, going all the way back to many of the big earthquakes, the Loma Prieta earthquake in the late 90s. Things really expanded after 1994 in the Northridge earthquake. Those wildfires tend to have victims in a very closed area. Earthquakes tend to be spread out. So there was a lot of people around CSLB that did become involved because the outreach was such a wide area. So we've got a important history of being involved in the post disasters. Now, during the summer and fall of 2020, as the chair mentioned, CAL FIRES responded to almost 8,500 incidents, including large extended wildfires. And as you can see on the chart that we have on page 164, and this was put together probably about 3 weeks ago, so it's already changed a little bit. Fortunately, the fires have died down, but 5 of the 6 largest wildfires in California history have happened in the last 3 months. So fortunately, in some of those huge fires, they've been in fairly rural areas, so the number of structures destroyed has been lower than we saw a couple years ago with the Camp Fire up in Paradise, and the year before with the Tubbs Fire, and the other ones in the Santa Rosa and Napa Valley areas. Still, though, we've had destroyed or damaged almost 9,200 structures, so that's significant. And I know that Nancy Simpson, in her role as building official here in Sacramento and before in Butte County, we've worked together a lot on disaster responses, but she sees firsthand how what happens is when these disasters happen, they don't just go on for a couple of months and then you move on to something else. They continue. It takes years for the rebuilding efforts to get underway and to be successful. So our CSLB commitment isn't for just right after a wildfire. It does continue. We're still doing outreach in the Tubbs Fire up in Santa Rosa. As Jesse mentioned during the last meeting in enforcement, we did a press release with an enforcement action we took against a contractor, and I'll note that in a moment. But things do continue. So as we see more wildfires, the work for CSLB just continues to add up because we have additional fires that we have to reach out and respond to. So as you can see at the bottom of 164, the first step is always the local assistance centers. We've got a very good working relationship with the California Office of Emergency Services and FEMA. OES, the Office of Emergency Services, the first thing they'll do after a disaster, when there's a call from the local officials that they would like to have a local assistance center, those are set up. Those are one-stop shop for the wildfire survivors to come in and get everything from a new driver's license. They can get information about the county resources available to them, different state agencies. We partner closely with the Department of Insurance and others. And so in the past years, we've normally staffed every local assistance center with a person there every day. So every day the assistance center would be open, we would staff it. A big challenge and a strain on our resources is because these are often in rural areas, so we have to have people going back and forth from Sacramento or from one of our closest offices, because hotels and the like are being taken up by the wildfire survivors who've had to be evacuated. So there's a significant commitment to not only money but staff time, which does take them away from their other duties. One thing that has been different this fall is because of COVID, some of the LACs have actually been virtual, which has worked out well for us because we've been able to be in these places with materials without actually physically having to be there. So in some of those cases, that's been the situation. We have had some where the counties have specifically requested that we have staff. And so we've done two things. And the ones that we can staff, we may not be able to staff them every day, but we will have staff there for many days. And when we aren't, we had signs there at our table, and we set up a special secondary phone line. We do have a disaster hotline, a toll-free line that's available. It goes into our call center, but we set up a completely separate line that my staff monitored on a daily basis. So whenever the local assistance center was open, we monitored the phone line, and we were able and available to take any phone calls that came from anybody who showed up at the table and wanted information and couldn't get it. So we try to be creative in how we're able to still be there and be able to respond. What you can see on the top of page 165 is a list of the fires where there have been local assistance centers, and this has grown by a couple. There's been a couple additional wildfires where we've had staff at LACs over the last couple of weeks. But you can just see that the sheer numbers, and on the right column there, you can see the ones that we either had in-person staffing, or we had materials only that we provided. The next element of our outreach has to do with boots on the ground, and a lot of this is done by our statewide investigative fraud team, or SWIFT. This is the disaster signs that we will go out and we will post in the area. And oftentimes they are going to partner with the Department of Insurance and usually the local district attorney's office. And they'll go out and do an education. They'll walk through the areas. They'll come across any contractors they see, give them information, encourage them to contact us if they see any unlicensed activity. If we happen to come across anybody unlicensed, then we're in a position to deal with that. But it really is focused a lot on education, letting the survivors know that there's help out there, that they're not alone when it comes to this, and trying to protect them from becoming victims a second time. So during the fires this fall, our SWIFT staff have placed hundreds of signs throughout the different fire areas. At the bottom of 165, we put this in place a couple of years ago with the first fires in the Napa and Santa Rosa area, but there are many times where our licensees are victimized. They have lost their homes. In some cases, they've lost their record, maybe their license. And so we've waived the fees for them to replace those materials. Another part that we're playing a role for us is there are different task forces that have been set up as the recovery effort starts. And there's 2 of them that CSLB is currently involved with. And my staff and also Mike Jimnetsky from our Ledge office has been involved. One of those is a debris task force. One of the unusual things by having so many fires this fall, normally the Office of Emergency Services would have one huge task force where all the different areas would be involved, and the local counties are also involved. And there'd be regular conference calls and working on all the elements that have to deal with, in this case, debris. And then there's another one, housing. It's the same thing. But because there were so many fires in such a short amount of time in many different parts and counties around the state, what they've done, OES, is broken it down into, I believe, 6 or 7 different task forces. So I've already been on the lines with one of them, done presentations, made our information available. I've reached out and presented our information to the other ones. So they're working and getting that information out to the county. We've already had some of the counties contact us with questions. And so that outreach has worked well. And that works out well for us because it also gives us the ability to kind of keep an eye on what's happening with the debris cleanup. What normally happens is OES and sometimes with FEMA, they'll put together a debris cleanup program that the homeowners can opt into to have the state program take care of the cleanup of the debris from their property, or they can choose to opt out and do the debris cleanup themselves or hire somebody. Obviously, you need to have a contractor's license. So we've got materials that go into that, what kinds of things they need to look for, what kind of license classifications in order to do the debris cleanup. So we've got those materials that we have available on the website. We've now worked with the county, so they're well aware of all of our materials. And so when somebody opts out, they can make that information available to the survivors. We have done media outreach. It's at the point now where a lot of the media is aware of the information, so we haven't done as many interviews, but the information is still getting out there and still getting used. Social media, we have done a lot. One of the areas that we're trying to focus on, and we had mentioned it in the last meeting talking about social media, 3 years ago, after the first fires in the Santa Rosa, I reached out to Nextdoor because we were starting to see that as being a more, a very popular area, and wanted to see if we might be able to do some work with them and be able to get a page. At the time, they were only focusing on local, like either cities or counties, to let those government agencies be part of it. As you can see on page 166, though, we were able to get them to allow us to post into 9 different counties around California, and those were the 9 counties that were affected in 2018. We use this as one of our outreach tools. We've tried to go back to Nextdoor to see if they will expand. The Office of Emergency Services was the only other state agency that was allowed to post to the state. At this point, though, they're telling us that they are not going to allow us to go into any other counties because they don't understand that we're a law enforcement agency. They say we're only going to use law enforcement agencies. So we're still trying to work with them. They have offered us the opportunity to buy sponsorships to be able to buy our way onto the sites, but that isn't really financially feasible. The cost would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $150,000 a year. And that just doesn't make sense for us financially. And we really should be on the free side as a government agency that does law enforcement. So that's something that I'm sure that I'll leave in my list for my whoever's going to follow me up in this seat. So they'll be able to follow up on that. But Nextdoor is a good feature. We do have these 9 counties that we're able to reach out to, and we've had a lot of success. We are doing a lot more postings fire related for the ones that have fires right now in a lot of these same counties. As I mentioned, we do have the disaster hotline and the wildfire workshops. We are in the process now that the evacuation's over and people are starting to go through the insurance efforts. We are now reaching out to the counties to let them know that we would like to work with them on workshops. So I would like to make the appeal to the committee members and all the board members if they're listening. If there's any of that outreach that you would like to be involved in, whether it's in your area where you may live, or if there's something that you would like us to include you in, please let us know. And as we develop these workshops or get things scheduled, we would certainly love to include you as well. So we are reaching out to some of the different areas now and trying to set them up. At the bottom of 167, I just wanted to note briefly that when we had our rash of wildfires here, they had a very similar rash of devastating wildfires just to the north of us in the state of Oregon. And as you can see there, at least 11 people were killed up there and 5,700 structures. So while not as many as here in California, still that's devastating for the state of Oregon. And they're facing some of the same rebuilding challenges that we have. So as you can see at the end of September, the registrar set up a meeting with the officials, senior officials at the Oregon Construction Contractors Board. And so we all got on a WebEx call and spent time with them going over best practices, the kinds of things we see, the kinds of things they should be looking for. And I think they were very receptive to that. And I think our goal, especially working through NASCLA, which is our big contractor licensing agency group that we're part of, is we want to share our best practices. We tend to be on the leading edge when it comes to regulating this industry, and we've got a reputation and a history of always trying to help out our other states who are doing similar things. So that was good to have that, and I'm sure over time we'll have more contact and working with the Oregon board. Finally, I wanted just to note complaints. Obviously, one of the main reasons we do this is because we feel like an educated consumer, there's less chance that they're going to have problems with their rebuilding projects and then have to file a complaint. So what we did is we have begun over the last 3 years tracking complaints that come in that are related to the disasters. So as you can see here on page 168, when we went through and we reviewed those complaints, that we really came away with a feeling that our work on the outreach side has really been successful. We receive an average of 30 disaster-related complaints a month. That's maybe one a day. And as I mentioned earlier, I haven't run the total of fires over the last 3 years, but we've got to probably have 25,000 structures, something like that have been destroyed around the state. So we get about the average of a complaint a day. So that's a substantial improvement to the 90 complaints we got a day back in the mid-90s in the Northridge quake that I mentioned earlier in 1994. Now, a small handful of those complaints have led to administrative actions or criminal referrals to a local prosecutor. I did include a media story there that it was referred to briefly in the enforcement meeting. Fortunately, the serious cases have been few and far in between. This one, we had, I think, 14 consumer complaints against this contractor. The vast majority of complaints we get, there's one against a contractor. Some that have been two. There's only been a handful that have gotten more than 2 complaints. So that really does lead us to the reassurance that the hard work and the dedication that the board makes is really successful and has helped protect the people as they go through the very long and difficult rebuilding process. So, Madam Chair, that is a look at the response to the wildfires. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rick. Would any committee members like to ask any questions or have any comments? Seeing none, go ahead.
I raised my hand, sorry.
Sorry.
I'd just like to make a comment that in regards to like what you noted, Rick, in regards to the social media, you said on page 166 there, though not everybody, when they go through a disaster, always has the ability to still connect with computers or their cell phones and stuff. It is a method that works, but that boots on the ground program and the signage that goes up, it's everlasting and it's great. And I hope we continue to keep doing that, because as someone who just keeps getting pulled back into each and every disaster and just worked the North Complex one, those are critical and they're really important. And they also serve the need of the individuals that are affected by this, that you're there for them, that CSLB is still out there protecting them when they see those signs and they drive by them over and over. It's really good for them to know somebody's having their back. So it's really good. And I hope we continue to keep doing that with that signage. And then in regards to the workshops, those are very beneficial. And as you know, I'm always available to help with those. And just huge kudos to this group, to all the SWIFT, to your staff and the CSLB staff members that work on these disasters, because with the disasters comes a lot of emotions. And when you work in those LACs, the local assistance centers, and you speak with these individuals on the phone, you know, it's real trying. And it's really, I've heard lots of good stories of staff comforting them and helping them and guiding them in the right way. Even if it might not even be CSLB, they refer them to the right agency. So huge kudos out to the group. It seems like it's never ending. Let's hope we have less and less, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you. If I could just say a couple of things, just so the other committee members know, I didn't really go into a lot of details on the signs. We do have 2 signs that we post. They're in English on one side and Spanish on the other side. One warns the homeowners that they may be solicited by unlicensed or unscrupulous contractors, to be aware of that. The other one is a warning for unlicensed contractors that they may face a felony charge if they're caught contracting without a license in the disaster area. And the other thing about those signs is we spent a little bit extra money when we got them and made them heavy duty, real corrugated plastic. And so it's funny, a couple of months ago, I went and actually doing the research for this, went to a Google ground shot from Coffee Park, if you heard of that area in Santa Rosa where the whole subdivision was pretty much destroyed, and went to where we had actually done our press conference after the wildfire, and in the Google ground, now the houses are all built around it, but our sign is still there in the yard. There was one lot that was still open and our sign was still there, and you could read it. So part of our goal there is to get them out there, and they will stand the test of time until somebody removes them.
Thank you. And thank you, Nancy. Are there any other committee members that wish to comment or have any questions? Okay, before I move forward and to the public comments, I just want to say that Rick and I have been talking very briefly about trying to find workshops and ways to work with senior centers to try to put on different types of programs. So I'm hopeful to continue those conversations going forward into the future. Rick, are there any public comments?
There are no comments from the public at this time.
Okay, then our next agenda item is item D. And it is an update and discussion on outreach efforts to potential licenses. For that, I'll turn the floor back over to Rick.
Okay, thank you. We were on page 173. Okay, the beginning of this starts with the overview. We want the committee to understand just what's happened with our license population over the last 10 years. We reached a peak of licenses back in the year 2009. Just before the recession hit and things really took a dive. So we reached that peak then in 2009. Then after that, we saw our license numbers, both active and inactive licenses, drop for 9 straight years. And while that number has inched up slightly over the past 2 years, today there are about 32,000 fewer licensed contractors in the state than there were 12 years ago. In doing research too, we did find out that actually over roughly the same time, the number of people actually employed in the construction industry grew by almost a third to 840,000 people. So those statistics raise the question for us, is there anything that we can do to help attract people who are in the industry to actually take the next step and move to get their contractor's license? So our Public Affairs Office took the lead on 3 different initiatives to provide support to the licensing committee on a 4th item. It's focused on developing outreach programs to help encourage more people to get their contractor's license. And those include a new program to promote the recently approved B2 license classification. And that's going to be a big deal for public affairs and for the whole board over the next year or so as we develop this new classification. We really, as the committee members know, this is in many ways can be a game changer for the industry. So there'll be a lot of important outreach that's going to have to be developed. We also have created the online Get Licensed to Build applicant workshop, and a number of our board members have actually appeared and joined us on those to do welcomes. We have another one coming up this Friday. And Jim Wayne is on our Ledge and Licensing Committee. He's our License Committee Chair. He'll be joining us at the beginning of that to offer a welcome. But we usually get somewhere between 200 and 350 people that join us on that workshop that we go through the license application, the kind of information we're looking for, and we help them out so they can do a much better job filling out their application and then go through what's required. The new things we're looking at doing too is a new program focused on minorities and low-income communities, and a program focused on women in construction. Again, many of that's going to be done a lot as with the licensing committee. So as reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics from January 10th through August of 2020, construction employment in California grew by 281,000 people. During that same period, as I mentioned, our licensed population dropped by over 24,000 from 307,000 contractors to just under 283,000. So that revealed a significant increase in the number and a simultaneous decrease. And so that's where the ideas came up to focus on this. I won't go through it, but the charts on 174, you can see the year-by-year breakdown of the number of construction workers in California. You can see how those numbers have grown. And then you can also see the information about how our licensed population has decreased. You can see in the far right column on the top of 175 there, you can tell that the numbers that are in green is when the years the licensed population has gone up. You can see, especially in 2008, 2007, it grew a lot, slowed down, and then hit the skids in 2009, 2010, and you can see dropped. And then we saw a little bit of an increase in the year 2018, which is reflected in the January 2019 numbers, and a little bit slower increase January of this year. And you can see as of October 1st, our numbers have gone down about 2,700. Part of that's due to the COVID and the fact that we had our testing centers closed for a couple of months. And so that's building back. Things have steadied now, and we actually are seeing a little bit of growth, which is a good thing. On 175, it's what I mentioned. There's just more information about the B2, the Get Licensed to workshop. Now, the areas about the underrepresented communities, again, we want to focus on making sure that we're putting our information out to areas that are maybe frequented or that have more opportunities to get to minorities and people with low income that may be in the construction industry, that to let them know what the possibilities are for them to improve their situations. And also, as I mentioned, for attracting more women to the construction industry. And there'll be more discussed about that coming up in the licensing committee. As far as the next steps, we're going to be using this information gathered to look to try to establish some future partnerships and look for the areas and the ways that we want to reach out. We've already got a meeting, I believe, coming up next week with the LA Urban League and other groups that we're going to be reaching out. There is also one person in our enforcement operation down in Norwalk who's assisting us with this, and she's been able to make contact with the LA Urban League. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but we just wanted to bring this to the board's attention as a way that we can hopefully, look to bring more people into the fold and to help them grow their careers in construction.
Thank you, Rick. Any questions or comments from any committee members? Nancy?
Yes, I have a question, Rick, in regards to the creation of the new B2 license in regards to public affairs. Is there going to be any kind of a launch through social media or through publications, or is there going to be any kind of a video to kind of explain this, flyers or anything to kind of kick this off?
Yeah, there is. The first step, we're in production of our fall newsletter right now, so there'll be information in that as well as industry bulletins. We'll create a lot of website content. Social media is obviously going to be a big place that we're going to be promoting that. So yeah, there's going to be lots of different elements, lots of ways that we're going to be reaching out to let them know. And the first step I think we're going to take is we've already gotten some feedback. Our testing unit is already starting to work on putting together the exams. And so they're starting to hear from some of the licensees questioning, why is this B2 needed? So I think some of our first outreach is going to be trying to explain the need for this and just what it means and how it's not really, we don't see it as being a threat to the B or the future B1 license, but it's just going to help address the need in this industry and a need to help those people that can't qualify for the full B license, that are not doing work that involves the framing or structural work. So yes, to answer your question in shorter way, yeah, there's going to be lots of different elements. We'll use every tool that we can to reach out and to let people know about it.
Thank you, Nancy. Are there any other questions or comments from committee members? Seeing none, Rick, are there any public comments?
Yes, we do have one public comment. One person with their hand up, Scott Lestraco. You go ahead and please make your comments.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
What's the difference between the B and the B2 specifically? And what would be the difference in testing?
I'm sorry?
And what would be the difference in the testing between the two?
Okay, thank you. I know we've got, Mike Jimneski, who's our ledge chief, or Justin Paddock, who's our licensing. They might be in a better position to answer that.
Rick, this is Dave. I can answer that question.
Even better.
The difference is with the new B2, we call it the residential remodeling classification. It was developed so that it will meet the remodeling needs of consumers. The general building class that we currently have requires that the applicant have substantial framing or rough carpentry experience. And what we found is a lot of remodeling contractors don't have that experience. And when their workers apply to become a licensed contractor, they don't meet the minimum qualifications. And we've done a study and found that up to 50% of our applications for remodeling are denied. And so we look at that as one reason why our population has decreased. And it's very important to us that when we develop the exam for the new classification, that it focus on the workmanship issues we're seeing in the remodeling industry. I look at the law and business exam will be just exactly the same for the two classifications. The trade exam will differ in that the new classification won't have as many questions relating to framing and rough carpentry, but have more of an emphasis on the workmanship issues that we're seeing with our consumer filed complaints.
Okay, Madam Chair, that is the only public comment we've gotten.
Okay, and thank you, Dave, for the explanation. Moving into our final agenda item today, review, discussion, and possible action to amend CSLB'S 2019-21 Public Affairs Strategic Plan objectives. This starts on page 171 of your meeting packet, and I'll turn it back to Rick again to give us some updates.
All right, thank you. We are on page 181. We'll start with 4.1, which is the distribution of a calendar of key meetings, events, activities to board members to increase participation and your abilities to advocate on the board's behalf. That had already been completed. With COVID, there really hasn't been a lot of any public events that you would be able to participate in. As I mentioned earlier in this meeting, as we develop the plans for workshops for the disasters, we would certainly welcome the opportunities to include you. And so that's something that'll probably be coming back as we send this out usually at the first of the month, let you know what's happening for that month. If there's anything in particular you have interest or potentially legislators that you have an interest in, we also have our senior scam stoppers. We've started on a limited basis bringing those back as was mentioned earlier. Jane Kreidler, who was our outreach coordinator, left our board a couple of months ago. And so we are not filling that position this time being because of COVID. There just isn't enough full-time work until things get going again. So we are picking up, we've got a couple of them scheduled for this month virtually. So at some point when the schedule gets big enough or we have a way that we can involve board members, we'll be able to do that. Item 4.2. is that disaster relief. It was mentioned briefly in the enforcement program. What we're doing now is we've got the drafts finished for that, and what we're doing is we're updating it to reflect some of the changes that I discussed because of COVID. So I've got 2.5 days to get that finished before I leave, and that's my goal. That's one of the things I'm going to get finished. So that's it's listed as completed, but I am going to update that because of COVID. Item 4.3 is the workload analysis. That was no longer needed. We were granted an additional position for our TV specialist, for our full-time video person who we've had on staff for a number of months now. Item 4.4 is the item in partnership with enforcement to implement the plan to identify opportunities to increase enforcement actions, the publicity on those, and relaunch the most wanted, as was mentioned in the enforcement committee meeting. That has been completed. We have added people to the most wanted. We are updating that, and we are adding people as they come to us. So that item is completed. 4.5, the feasibility of a text alert program. The proposed target date is for the feasibility. This was I believe at the September meeting. This implementation date was moved back to December 2020. So that is coming up. So we've addressed the feasibility. But right now, other IT priorities and the resources now in public affairs, with a couple of us being gone, is not really enabling us to do that. The other thing that's kind of holding back is a text system isn't really going to help us right now because we don't gather text numbers from our licensees. So we're trying to begin figuring out a way that we want to, whether that's going to be part of the renewal or some other way, but that has to be developed. So it's probably going to be tied to that once we start getting enough phone numbers to be able to text out to our licensees, or down the road when we look at having an online application. Item 4.6 is expanding the website. That's an ongoing thing. September 2019, we did complete that, but it is ongoing. We are working with IT staff on that on an ongoing basis. Item 4.7 is a partnership with licensing and information technology to develop the online original Contractors app. That's just what I mentioned, the online app. Some of the focus had been changed to do the online renewals, which we've made great progress and have some of those already in place. But that is still a priority. We've got the proposed target date now is for December, so in the next year. So that will be work that will be continuing. We are in a support role right now to both licensing and IT. Item 4.8 is an orientation video for new staff. Now that we do have our video folks in place, we are working on this right now. It's in production. We expect to have that done before February of next year. Item 4.9. Again, with the IT unit to review and update web content to make sure it's accurate and accessible. One of the challenges of websites is that information does become dated at some point, and sometimes laws change. Sometimes there's just references that need to be updated. And also we've had the big challenges to make sure our site is in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act standards. So we are working on that on an ongoing basis. We have our student assistant updating a lot of our historical materials that we had to pull offline because it didn't meet the ADA requirements. So that's an ongoing project. And finally, item 4.10 is in partnership with enforcement and licensing for the online courses. As was mentioned in the enforcement meeting, the first one, the building officials, which Nancy played a big part in us being able to complete that is up and online. And it's being used when letters of admonishment for building permit violations get issued to licensees. They are required to go to the website and watch the video and go through that information. And we're looking for those opportunities to expand those courses in the future. That is it for the strategic plan updates.
Okay, thank you, Rick. And just to clarify, Rick's report started on page 181 as opposed to page 171, as I had said earlier. Since there are no requested changes, there's no need for a committee vote on this item. But do any committee members have any comments or questions on these items? Are there any public comments, Rick?
No, there are no public comments for this item.
Okay, thank you. That completes today's committee meeting agenda items. Can I please get a motion and a second to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, the committee members have motioned and second. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Have a good day. Be safe.
Okay.
Does anyone need a little break before we start? Are we okay?
And I'll turn it over to Committee Chair Jim, and I don't want to mispronounce his last name, so I won't, for the Licensing Committee Chair.
Thank you, Diana. Jim Ruane.
Right, thank you. Thank you.
Does anyone need a break? Or are we ready to rock and roll here? Looks like we're good. Okay. Good morning. The time is 11:17 a.m. and I'd like to call the November 4th, 2020 meeting of the California Contractor State License Board Licensing Committee. I'm Jim Ruane, the committee's chair. Please note that only board members who are members of the licensing committee may participate in the meeting. Other board members who are in attendance may observe but cannot ask questions or participate in the discussion. To committee members, we will start our meeting with our cameras on, but if we experience any bandwidth issues, I may ask you later to turn off your video camera. When you would like to comment at any time throughout the meeting, please select the raise your hand icon in the WebEx application. I will call on committee members to speak. When called upon, please unmute yourself, and when you are finished, return to mute. You will also need to click on the raise your hand icon again to lower your hand. Joining us today is Registrar David Fote, Chief Deputy Registrar Tanya Cochran, CSLB staff, and our board legal counsel, Jason Hurtado. Feliz, could you please call the roll?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Jim Ruane?
Here.
Frank Altamira?
Here.
Augie Beltran?
Here.
Rodney Gobos,
Here.
Miguel Galarza,
Here.
Susan Grandella. Susan?
Here.
Mary Tucker.
Here.
Thank you.
We have a quorum.
Committee members, we have two new board members that were recently appointed joining the committee today, Rodney Cobos and Miguel Galarza. Gentlemen, do you mind briefly introducing yourselves? And I'll begin with Rodney.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rodney Cobos with the work for the Southern California Pipe Trades. And I'd just like to thank everyone so far that has been so helpful in getting me situated with getting on the board. So thank you.
Thank you, Rodney. Miguel, would you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Miguel Galarza, the owner of Yerba Buena Engineering Construction here in San Francisco. Born and raised here in San Francisco and currently live in Millbrae. And everybody's been very accommodating and welcoming to me, to the committee. I'm looking forward to rolling up my sleeves, if I had sleeves, and making it happen.
Great. Thank you both and welcome. The next item is item B, public comment session for items not on the agenda and future agenda items requests. Next is item B, our public comment section. This item is provided for public comment pertaining to items not on this agenda. To allow the committee enough time to conduct its full schedule of business, I will be limiting public comments to 3 minutes apiece. Please note that state law prohibits committee members from discussing any matter brought up during public comment. We are also not allowed to act on any item not on this agenda. If you want the committee to discuss a topic not on the agenda, you can ask us to consider placing that issue on the agenda of a future meeting. If you have an application, complaint, or disciplinary charges pending before the board, we ask that you not discuss the details of your case or pending complaint. Committee members are not permitted to receive evidence or information that is not part of the administrative record in the case. If your comments are related to a specific agenda item, you can make your comments now, but you may want to wait until that item comes up for discussion. We will ask for public comment before acting on any item. Members of the public, if you joined us on WebEx and would like to make a comment at this time, either raise your hand or use the chat feature to send us a note that you would like to offer public comment. If you joined us by phone and would like to make a public comment, please press *3 to raise your hand. We will use the same system throughout the meeting for public comment during each agenda item. Rick Lopes is our moderator today. He will be assisting us by monitoring the public teleconference line. And Rick, on behalf of the licensing committee, I know we're really going to miss you, and we all wish you the very best of luck going forward.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any public comments now, Rick, or anything we need to address at this time?
No, Mr. Chair, I've got one hand that's up from the previous meeting, so I don't know if there's a new comment from this person, so I'm just going to open the line real quick. And Scott Lestraco, do you have a new comment for this meeting, or if not, if you can just lower your hand? Okay, not hearing anything, but yes, other than that, no public comment.
Thank you very much. Our next item is item C, review and discussion on policy changes related to signature requirements on CSLB license renewal applications. Please turn to page 193 for agenda item C. As many of you know, our licensing division continues to explore ways to improve procedures for how individuals apply for and maintain their license with the board. One way to do this is to minimize how many renewals CSLB must return each month because it receives the wrong signatures. Currently, staff require qualifiers and other specified individuals on a license to sign a renewal or it is returned. Additionally, if an individual signs that is not listed on the license, for example, the bookkeeper or office manager signs, we will return it and ask the company to remove the signature. In 2019, staff asked the board to consider a legislative proposal for signature requirements, and the board chose not to take up the matter at that time. Staff subsequently met with the board's legal counsel, Jason Hurtado, and determined under current law, only qualifiers are required to sign, and there is no need to return a renewal if someone not listed as personnel of record signed it in addition to the qualifier or qualifiers. It is important to note that the procedural change staff is proposing is, number one, only to renew a license and not for other functions. Number two, if someone signs that may be an undisclosed officer, the matter can be referred to enforcement for further review. And number 3, staff will continue to ensure licensee information remains consistent with board records and the California Secretary of State's office. Staff plans to change its internal procedures on November 16, 2020, and believes this will significantly reduce the number of renewals we currently return. No committee or board action is necessary at this time. Any comment from the public on this, Rick?
Sorry, lost my mute button. No public comment at this time.
Anything from the members of the committee?
Yeah, Jim, how many on average applications are returned? How big of an issue is this?
We do have a significant return rate, but it really fluctuates throughout the year. As you would expect, you kind of see it in the holidays a little bit more. We're usually under 10%, but it does fluctuate. We're just trying to get as efficient as we can.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, actually, I do have a member of the public that has raised their hand there on the telephone, so I'll go ahead and mute your line. Please go ahead and make your public comment. Do we have somebody on the phone who would like to make a public comment at this time? If so, please unmute your phone. And there you go. Go ahead. Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Hi, this is Phil Vermeulen. I'm President CEO of Contractor Licensing Center and work extensively with contractors and have for over the last 40 years. And I cannot emphasize enough that this is a very excellent move and highly recommend that you do this. I can't begin to tell you how many problems we get with calls from clients who have sent in either the wrong signatures or not the ones. This will save up a lot of your staff. So for all of those reasons, I really recommend that you move forward with this. Thanks.
Thanks for your comment. That is the only public comment at this point.
Thank you very much, Rick. The next item is item D, an update and discussion on outreach efforts to increase women's participation in construction. Please turn to page 197 for agenda item D. Some of you may know that I also serve as president of the Wall and Ceiling Alliance, and one area I'm passionately pursuing in that role is increasing women participation in the construction industry. I've met with CSLB staff on several occasions to help promote this for the construction industry. A special thanks to Rick Lopes in Public Affairs, staff has established a 3-phase outreach plan that's in your booklet. To assist staff and to ensure industry participation, board member Mary Teichert and I volunteered to oversee this effort. I am pleased to announce that Board Chair Delatorre recently appointed us both to a 2-person advisory committee for this purpose. Mary, I know you're there. Would you like to add anything?
I very much appreciate the initiative. I think there's a whole lot of untapped talent and it could be potentially interested in our line of work. So I appreciate that we're working on this.
There's no committee or board action necessary at this time. Rick, any committee members want to comment on this at all?
Yeah, this is Augie. As you know, we have a very vibrant women's group here in the Carpenters Union. And the Sisters in the Brotherhood number in the hundreds here in Northern California. If we can do anything to help out in this initiative, we'd love to participate with this.
Thank you, Augie, and I appreciate that. And I know we reached out to the laborers and a lot of other union outreach participation, and I think it's going to be great going forward because I see a real need, and it's going to be great for the industry. Just people with the tools, and also contractors that sit as Mary do. It's going to be nice working with all of you going forward. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any comment from the public, Rick?
No public comment on this item.
All right. Thank you. Item E, review, discussion, and possible action to amend CSLB's 2019-2021 licensing strategic plan. Please turn to page 203 for agenda item E. There are no deadlines that staff are currently seeking to change on the licensing strategic plan, but I have asked Justin to give us a brief update on the status of these items. Justin?
Good morning, board members. I'll just quickly run through these. I think a lot of these have already been touched on other committees. The first one, 1.1, that's creating our online asbestos open book examination. That was completed and is underway and actually being quite successful. Number 1.2 is just updating industry bulletins. This is something that we continue to do ongoing. The most recent one that we have is on service station equipment. And throughout the year, we update those regularly based on issues we see. Item 1.3, looking at the B2 license classification that's already been discussed at our meeting today. Thanks to our legislative office, that bill was passed and we're currently in exam development, as was already discussed. The next phase of our exam development actually will be kicking off very shortly, which is the occupational analysis. Item 1.4, I am happy to report, I heard from our legislative office this morning. We filed our regulations with the Office of Administrative Law yesterday. So those regulations should be in play very shortly with regard to our criminal background checks and some legislative changes that occurred last year with Assembly Bill 2138. With regard to item 1.5, working with the legislative committee, we're looking on bonding requirements. Mike will have more of an update for you just very shortly. Worked with his office on this, and he'll be presenting the full report shortly. Item 1.6, looking at the researching of outsourcing our test administration. We're currently working with DCA to go through that transition as we speak. Again, thanks to the legislative office, we do have the legislative authority now to pursue that. Item 1.8, we're looking at the feasibility of continuing education and online testing. Just due to COVID and a couple of other priorities, we have set that aside. We haven't begun it yet, but we still see no issues with being on track for our deadline of the end of next year. Moving to the last page, item 1.9, our Public Affairs Enforcement Division, working with them on online courses to educate licensees. The Enforcement Division already touched on that, so I'll skip that item unless there's questions at the end. Item 1.10 is also, it's a public affairs item on increasing transparency on our website. Rick already previously spoke to that one. Moving to item 1.11, evaluate call center processes and procedures. We're actually in the process of upgrading our call center, which we hope by next Monday or about midweek next week, staff will be able to actually answer the phone line from remote work stations through laptops. We're working on that as we speak. We're also working to remove some of the externalities of our phone tree to just keep it more simple for those who call in. And we're ongoing with updating our manual as we speak. Finally, item 1.12, review of subject matter expert pool. That is an ongoing thing that the testing division does. I'm happy to give you any updates, but we're continually trying to look for those out there who want to help us participate, especially in the era of COVID where a lot of this is going remote. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Jim, I think you're muted.
No, hear me now? Okay, good. No committee or board action is necessary at this time. Are there any committee member comments or questions for Justin? Rick, any public comment?
No public comment.
All right, thank you. Our next item is adjournment. There'll be no other items on the agenda for today. After we adjourn, I'll turn it over to Augie Beltran for legislative, and he can decide if people want a 5-minute break or not. Do I have a motion to adjourn the licensing committee?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? There a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Felice, please call the roll.
And I apologize for interrupting, Jim. It looks like we don't need the roll. Tanya set me straight on that.
That's good. Then we'll do that for future. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
All righty. It's 11:32 right now. Let's come back at 11:40. Everybody can have a small break because I think this is going to go at least 40 minutes. So we'll be back at 11:40.
All righty. Are we all coming back now? Rick, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. Sorry. I hear you just fine. Yes. Yes, I think everybody should be available to come back here now.
Okay. Well, I'm going to call the November 4th, 2020 Legislative Committee meeting to order. My name is Augie Beltran. I'm the committee chair. At this time, I'd like to welcome our new board members, Rodney Cobos and Miguel Galarza. Welcome to the board. And also at this time, I'd like to thank you, Rick. You've been of great help to me and the rest of the board. I remember meeting you the very first time 8 years ago, almost 8 years ago when I was first appointed. And I really thank you for all you've done and all the help and support you've given me, myself. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please note that only board members who are members of the legislative committee may participate in the committee meeting. Other board members who are in attendance may observe but cannot ask questions or participate in the discussion. Committee members, when you'd like to comment at any time throughout the meeting, either select the raise your hand icon on the WebEx. I'm in because I'm not really good at this WebEx type stuff. When called upon, please unmute yourself, and when finished, return to mute. You will also need to click the raise your hand icon to lower your hand. We'll now introduce committee members and staff. Joining us today is Registrar David Fote, Chief Deputy Registrar Tanya, CSLB staff, and our board legal. Go ahead and do a roll call for us.
Augie Beltran.
Here.
Frank Altamura.
Here.
Rodney Cobos.
Here.
Miguel Galarza.
Here.
Susan Granzella.
Here.
Jimmy Wayne.
Here.
Mary Taker.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We start with B, public comment session for items not on the agenda and future agenda item requests. This item is provided for public comment pertaining to items on the agenda. Should say items not on the agenda. Please remember the committee cannot discuss or take action on any items not listed on the agenda. The CSLB welcomes public comment on any item on the agenda. It is CSLB's intent to ask for public comment prior to the committee taking action on any agenda item. But if for some reason we forget to ask for public comment on an agenda item, a member of the public desiring to comment on the item should raise their hand and they will be recognized. If your comments do not involve an item on today's committee agenda, this item will be the time to, time to make those comments. Also, to allow this committee sufficient time to conduct its scheduled business, we will be limiting public comment to 3 minutes per individual. Members of the public, if you joined us on WebEx and would like to make a comment at this time, either raise your hand or use the chat feature to send us a note that you would like to offer public comment. If you joined us by phone and would like to make a public comment, please press *3 to raise your hand. We will use the same system throughout the meeting for public comment during each agenda item. Rick, at this time, are there any members of the public who'd like to make a request?
No public comment at this time.
Anyone from the committee? Would anyone from the committee like to say something? I don't see any hands. You got anything there, Rick? Okay.
No comments, no hands.
And we're now on C, update on the 2019-2020 enacted legislation. We're now on page 219 of your packets. This section is an update on legislative bills on which the CSLB took a formal position for the 2019-2020 legislative session. The board last voted on these bills at its June 5th, 2020 meeting. Chief Jay, give us an update.
Good morning / afternoon all. For the new members, my name is Mike Jemnetsky, and I am the Chief of Legislation for the Contractors Board. We are very happy to have you on board. So these measures, as the chair stated, the board has already, these have been enacted. The CSLB had a very successful legislative session with regard to the measures that the board supported and sponsored, especially in light of the COVID situation. So for our new members, I'm just going to give a brief background on those measures that we were successful with this year. On page 219, AB 2210, this actually goes back to April of 2018 when the board directed CSLB staff to work with DOSH to address and attempt to resolve some of this safety concerns that were raised by the tree service industry. So this concept is a couple years old, and this bill was identified as an effective way for CSLB to get right to OSHA violations through its disciplinary authority. It also provides some additional time for CSLB to prosecute those violations because the existing statute did not provide a significant time frame for doing that. So this bill was successful this year. The CSLB now has authority to take disciplinary action against a tree service contractor for explicit violations of the safety rules of OSHA as it relates to tree service, providing safety, best materials, that sort of thing. AB 2232, renewal of licenses. This was actually sponsored by the Associated General Contractors, but CSLB did come out in support of it. That measure itself, 2232, was tabled because of COVID, but its content was put into SB 1474, which is later in your packet. So that measure was also successful. And what this does really is CSLB already had authority to grant a retroactive renewal of a contractor's license. So within, if a renewal for a license comes within 90 days, it comes to the board within 90 days of the expiration date of the license. Existing law authorized the board to retroactively reinstate that license back to the renewal date. But it had a weird provision in there, and the provision was only if the contractor could identify circumstances out of their control were the reason for them renewing late. This proved tough for our line staff to assign any meaning to and implement. So what this bill really did was eliminate this section, the subjective standard of whether a contractor renewed for reasons out of their control, and just allow the registrar to retroactively reinstate a renewal when the renewal comes in a couple of days late. So that measure was successful as well. AB 2471, the CSLB did not sponsor this, but we did support it. And this provides an extended right to counsel a home solicitation services contract from 3 days to 5 days for senior citizens, those who are over 65 years old. AB 3087, we've touched on this earlier today. The board will save a lot of money by joining a master contract that's already in place with DCA that administers license exams for various agencies. Right now, CSLB administers its own exams, and that involves test centers and staff and time. This measure allows CSLB to outsource or contract out for the administration of its exams. CSLB will continue to develop its own exams in-house. SB 1189, we've touched on that earlier as well. This is a successful measure for CSLB because it creates the new remodeling contractor's license. That actually goes back to 2015 before this board. At the end of 2015, the board staff did get authority to come up with a regulation for this remodeling contractor's license, and it just didn't move forward. But this measure has been in the works for a long time, and we are pretty thrilled that we now have a residential remodeling contractor's license. This SB 1189 also does some other make some other changes that were propelled by the author, not specifically by CSLB, that relate to disaster and home improvement, and particularly penalties for contracting in a disaster zone. So if you have any questions about those, feel free to contact me. And then 1474 is an omnibus bill. The changes that occurred are on your packet. They're technical and non-substantive, but I can answer any questions about those. But that is our update on our successful legislative year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief. Rick, is there any public comment on this?
No comment on this item.
Any board comment? I don't see any hands. Okay. Now that brings us to agenda item letter D, update on previously approved legislative proposals. Now we're on page 223 of your packet. This agenda item includes a summary and status update of legislative proposals approved by the board at the December 2019 and September 2020 meetings, for which staff will seek an author for in 2021. Chief, what do you got?
Yes, this is primarily an update on what the CSLB Legislative Division will be looking for authors for this year. There are 3 proposals here that have all been approved by the board, as the chair stated, and this does not include the measure that would include our fee increase, which we discussed briefly this morning in the executive committee, whether that would be a budget trailer bill or a policy bill. If the fee study goes to the board in December and the board authorizes CSLB to pursue legislation to increase fees by statute, that would be a 4th proposal. So there's 3 on this page and 1 more potentially for a total of 4 that CSLB would be seeking authorship for the 2021 session. But for a quick background, as mentioned, the 3 on this page, these have already been approved by the board. The increased civil penalties for specified violations of the Contractors law. The real quick and dirty here is the $15,000 cap for civil penalties. That's 27 years old. It hasn't been raised in 27 years, and the CPI index puts this closer to 30 grand. This would allow CSLB to recover some much needed revenue from enforcement penalties from an old statutory max. Same with the $5,000 max. That's 20 years old, or almost 20 years old, 2003. The CPI would, CPI is the consumer price index, would raise that to approximately $8,000. So this legislative proposal would propose to raise our civil penalties for the enforcement division from 15 to 30 for specified violations and 5 to 8 for others, the majority. The additional minor violations and a letter of admonishment. CSLB recently got authority to issue a letter of admonishment. It's something below a citation, but above a verbal slap on the hand. And it was a great measure for us because it allowed us to not send everything to citation, which is subject to appeal, which is subject to up to $10,000 for CSLB to prosecute for what you saw above, less than $10,000 in fines to recover. So a letter of admonishment was a great tool for something below a citation for CSLB to express to the licensee concerns and possible chance to educate for minor violations of the law. The problem with the letter of admonishment, not problem as much as limitation, is that as written, it only allows for 1 violation. The enforcement division has determined that it would be useful to include other violations in a letter of admonishment to achieve that same purpose of counsel, education, and corrective action without going to citation, but make it clear that this would not be for egregious violations. Egregious violations, anything with a financial injury, would still go to disciplinary action, which is a step above a letter of admonishment. So again, this proposal would authorize CSLB to include more than 1 violation in the letter of admonishment. And then sub B, this was the big one that we discussed at our September 2020 board meeting. What it does is preclude CSLB from accepting exemption certificates from workers' compensation. So under current law, everyone knows no matter what you do in California, if you're an employer, you have employees, you have to have workers' comp. The way it works under current law for CSLB is a contractor can tell the board that they don't have any employees, and they can fill out a 1-page form that certifies or promises to the board that they don't have any employees. Well, year after year, dating forever, we've found that between 50 and 60% of licensees file this exemption. And through the enforcement division, it just doesn't play out. We've discovered through research and enforcement actions, it just doesn't play out that the majority of licensed contractors in California who promise not to have employees actually don't have employees. So what this proposal does is preclude 3 license classes from filing an exemption in the first year. If this measure is successful, those would be the C8 concrete, C20 HVAC, and D49 tree service. These 3 licenses were selected for 2 reasons. One is CSLB staff and research and enforcement efforts have determined that these are likely to have employees. But 2 is we've been able to get the associations that represent some of these industries on board with this requirement. And then the measure at the same time would preclude the registrar from accepting exemptions from everybody by 2025. The practical effect of that is that it will be a condition of licensure starting in 2025 that a licensed contractor have a certificate of insurance on file with CSLB. That is the third proposal for which CSLB will be seeking an author. That is the update, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chief. Any comments from the public, Rick?
No comments.
Any comments from Jim Ruane? I see your hand up.
Thank you. Mike, what is your procedure or your steps in getting sponsorship for bills?
It's a great question. So sponsorship is kind of an informal term that some authors don't like to use. There's sponsorship and there's support. If the board formally votes to support a measure, then the board votes on it, and you've given staff authority to write the authors a letter of support, write the committees in the legislature a letter of support, or write to the governor a letter of support. Support is different from sponsorship. Sponsorship is kind of an informal ownership. And traditionally, without requiring board action, when the board, when CSLB staff brings a measure to the board and the board approves it, if it comes from CSLB, traditionally CSLB tends to be the sponsor. So for example, the three measures that are mentioned on page 223, those would all be board sponsored. Now, we've seen with authors in the past, some authors don't like the word sponsor. So we've used the word partnership before, but it's kind of an informal delegation. Does that answer your question, Jim?
Yeah, it does. I wasn't sure the procedure to get from here to there. And
sure. As far as getting an author, that is also it's an informal process that involves making calls, relying on relationships, talking to associations, hearing their recommendations, and finding somebody for which the policy that the measure advances is sort of in the ballpark of the prospective author. So it's there's kind of an art form to finding an author as well. And for these three measures on 223, we will be looking for an author here in the next few weeks. And if we are able to obtain an author and the authors are okay with it, CSLB would be the sponsor of the three measures on 223.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Any other board members? I don't see any hands. No one's chiming in.
Yeah,
Miguel has his hand up.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Miguel.
Yeah, Michael, a question for you regarding the increase in the penalty. Is there a provision in that legislation to potentially have a reoccurring cost price index built into that, or will we have to go back 5 years down the road and visit it again?
That is an excellent question, Miguel, or Mr. Galarza, I apologize. As written, the measure would just be a one-time increase. There's no provision for an incremental increase, so the board would have to go back to request an additional increase. Now, I will note, just on a point of interest, the chair of the Assembly Business and Professions Committee attempted a measure last year that would have authorized all DCA boards and bureaus to, under their own power, increase their fees through the Consumer Price Index. And that measure stalled in the Senate Business and Professions Committee. So it was attempted, but did not succeed. But that's just an aside, an interesting fact. This measure that we're talking about here is just a one-time Consumer Price Index increase. Thank you.
Okay. Doesn't look like I have anyone else. All right, we're moving to agenda item E. We're going to be looking for a motion here. Review, discussion, and possible action on legislative proposal that would make illegal dumping a cause of discipline for licensed contractors. We're on page 233 of your packets. The legislative language in the packet is for Assembly Bill 2368, introduced in 2020 by Assembly members Quirk and Mathis. Chief, go ahead and give us an explanation on this measure.
So, Mr. Ruane, you could not have teed up this issue more perfectly with your question about sponsorship. This is a perfect example of your question. The measure on 235 is not CSLB sponsored. It was also not successful. The reason it is here is because the CSLB received a lot of technical inquiries from the author on this measure, and we provided a lot of technical support. And as a result of our efforts, the author, Assemblymember Bill Quirk, did ask if CSLB would be interested in sponsoring this measure. So this would be the first time that I'm aware of in CSLB history, and I haven't been here that long, that CSLB would be asked to be a sponsor of a measure that did not come from the board. So that's what this is here to discuss. All that's being asked of the committee today is permission to forward this request from the Assembly member's office to the full board. So that would be to forward the request to the full board that CSLB consider sponsoring this measure. But let's give you some background. You'll see on page 236 that this measure, which will be introduced again by the Assembly member in the 2021 session, they did inform us they will be introducing this. They pulled it because of COVID. And they will introduce it whether CSLB can sponsor or not. So those are important facts. But all it does is add the words illegal dumping to an existing CSLB statute that gives CSLB authority to discipline contractors for violations of law that are outside of the contractor's law. So this section of law that would be amended is the same section that gives authority for CSLB to go after a contractor for failing to pull a permit, and various other labor and safety laws. It's kind of CSLB's catch-all for different areas of law that allow CSLB to pursue a license discipline for. So what happened here is Assembly Member Quirk introduced this with this measure because of environmental and safety and health concerns. Local DAs in Alameda County, Contra Costa County, specifically LA County, have identified as a problem illegal dumping, primarily construction materials. There's certainly been, batteries, mattresses, and other concerns, but we have documented cases of licensed contractors illegally dumping construction materials in these counties. And Assembly Member Bauer Cahan and the Alameda and Contra Costa County DAs actually got $750,000 in state funding to deal with this problem. But what we are told, and the reason this has come to our attention, is because these are really hard to prosecute. The reason being, it's difficult to prosecute an entity for a criminal violation, identifying the responsible actor, identifying witnesses. So we are told that these cases do not get prosecuted, and there winds up being no deterrent effect for a licensee who wants to save money by dumping construction materials. And it's apparently a problem throughout Southern and Northern California. So we were contacted by Assemblymember Quirk's office about this issue, and they said, hey, these aren't getting prosecuted. CSLB, can you go after these contractors? And we told them, if there is not a specified act or omission that violates the contractor's law that gives CSLB to suspend or revoke a license, give that authority, then we don't have authority. So if I throw some construction materials in my truck and dump them somewhere, I'm not acting in the capacity of a contractor, and nothing in the contractor's law specifically gives the registrar authority to revoke a contractor's license for that. So what this measure does is provide CSLB the authority to discipline a licensed contractor for illegally dumping construction materials. How would this work with CSLB? Well, real quick, licensed contractors only. We're not talking unlicensed contractors. 2, this would depend heavily on local jurisdictions. Very, very similar to building permit enforcement. We would have to talk to the local jurisdiction with the local ordinance, with the local law violation, and find out what happened and hinge upon the local jurisdiction's finding of the violation of illegal dumping. 3, CSLB would not be opening an illegal dumping unit or doing illegal dumping stings. This bill would not require that. This would be an addition to our existing authority. And finally, I did get a question before this meeting about this. What happens if a contractor's employee goes rogue and dumps something in an alley and the licensee had no knowledge of it? Well, we did talk to our legal counsel on this, and it's actually not very different than any other violation that we would hold an employer responsible for. If the employee was acting within the scope of their duties during work hours, getting paid by the licensee, we would hold the contractor responsible. But the key here is it would have to relate to a construction activity. We're not, if a licensee goes and dumps their nephew's science project That's not CSLB's jurisdiction. Illegal dumping is illegal, but what this is getting at is the act has to be connected to a construction site. This would give CSLB authority to directly discipline a licensee for violating a local illegal dumping law. It will be seen as more of a deterrent than existing law currently provides. And the request today is to seek permission to go to the full board to seek board approval of the sponsorship of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Do we have any questions from the board? I don't see any hands. Rick, do we have any questions from the public?
No public comment.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to authorize staff to present this measure to the full board in December and request that the full board consider the author's request for CSLB sponsor of this legislative measure. Do I have a motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Felice, please call roll. Oh, I'm sorry. I got to ask for public comment, Rick.
No public comment.
And back again to the board. Board comment. Okay, Felice, sorry to step on you.
Huggy Beltran,
Aye.
Frank Altamira,
Yes.
Ronnie Cobos,
Yes.
Miguel Galarza,
Yes.
Susan Granzella,
Yes.
Jimmy Wayne,
Yes.
Mary Tyker.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Felice. That brings us to agenda item F, review and discussion on board study to evaluate sufficiency of current $15,000 contractor bond amount and possible action on study recommendations. Business and Professions Code Section 7071.6E. Now we're on page 239 of your packet. Senate Bill 610 from 2019 was CSLB's most recent sunset bill. It required CSLB to conduct a study to evaluate if the current $15,000 bond amount is sufficient and whether an increase may be necessary, and submit the study to the legislature by January 1st, 2021. A draft of the study is now complete and is in your packet for review. Chief, do you want to give us a couple of ideas on what's going on here?
Sure. Yes, this relates, as the chair mentioned, this relates to CSLB's sunset bill. One of the issues that came up during sunset was whether the bond is sufficient. This research, which is in your packet, makes a few findings. Mainly, the most important, I think, for our discussion is that this bond protects homeowners, residential homeowners. Even though by statute, the bond protects anybody who is harmed by a contractor, our research demonstrates that the primary protection that this bond allows is for homeowners. So the study really does find that within the last 5 or 6 years, the value of construction contracts that consumer homeowners have filed at CSLB have steadily increased over the years, from the low 5,000s, which there are still plenty of those, but the range over $15,000 and $25,000, those numbers are increasing exponentially. And the fact is, the $15,000 bond is not enough to restitute a consumer harmed on one of those contracts. So the bond was, the recommendation here is that the highest that CSLB can raise this bond really is $25,000 without requiring some kind of separate underwriting process. It's not the goal of the bond being a minimum requirement for licensure if you have to take steps that you would need to take when you're applying for a house to get the bond. So our research indicates that if CSLB were to suggest a number higher than $25,000, it might require significant underwriting that's not done currently as part of the requirement of the license bond as a prerequisite for licensure. So this study found that approximately 20% or so of the bonds pay out to the full amount, $15,000, which probably means on all of those, or the majority of those, the bond was not sufficient. And approximately 1,300 license bonds are paid out each year through CSLB records. And it's probably time to increase the bond to match modern residential construction, which in the Pacific Northwest, the study finds is around $60,000 for your average remodeling project. So that's kind of some of the findings in the study, but I can answer any specific questions about the study. And sort of the last point is the CSLB was limited by the legislature to just answer one question. Is $15,000 sufficient? We weren't asked to recommend a new amount. We weren't asked to pursue legislation, just is $15,000 sufficient? For the reasons that I've stated, the study does present a draft conclusion that $15,000 is not sufficient. That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chief. Do I have anything from the public, Rick?
Yes, we do have one question from Alan Diaz. Alan, please go ahead and make your comment.
Yeah, my question was, is there any thought of like a sliding scale for the bonds? Like as some contractors get licensed and they're just starting off and they're getting little projects, maybe 15,000 is good for carrying their license. As they start growing, it sounds good that they would need a larger bond because they're doing bigger projects.
Thank you for that. Chief, have you looked into that?
Yes, thank you for that question. The CSLB conducted a lot of research for this study and solicited a lot of feedback from licensed contractors. And one of the themes that we discovered is on page 37 of the bond study or page 278 of your packet, which indicates that we received a lot of input about California implementing kind of a tiered bond system that prescribes different bond amounts for different license classifications. The fact is, some work that some contractors do is valued at a lot higher than work that other contractors do. Some license classes, a $15,000 bond is sufficient, whereas other classes is simply not. There's also the fact that public works contracts and certain large commercial contracts, there will be a contract bond unrelated to the license bond that will be part of the specific obligations in that contract that protect the owner. So these are all considerations that we flagged for the legislature to consider when they're looking at this issue. That's what the study does get into that. And that would require amending how the bond is currently done, but that's the purpose of studying this, is whether we need to amend it and how the bond is written. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief.
That's the only public comment.
Thank you, Rick. I don't see any board comment. So we're looking for a motion to authorize staff to present this measure to the full board in December and request that the full board consider the author's request for CSLB sponsor of this legislative. Wait a minute.
I'd make a motion.
Yeah. Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any board comment on that motion?
Can I interject?
Go ahead, Chief.
I apologize, Augie. There is a glaring typo in your script.
Yeah, I noticed that.
and you caught it. And so my apologies for that. The motion that we need here doesn't relate to a legislative measure. That is my fault. Please refer to the bottom of page 239.
Chief, do me a favor. State the motion that staff desires.
The staff recommendation is to authorize staff to make any minor and technical changes to the study, including any changes recommended by the committee, and present the draft study for consideration by the full board in December of 2020.
Does the maker of the motion accept that?
Yes.
Does the second of the motion accept that?
Yes.
Okay, so we're back on the question. Rick, is there any question on this from the public?
No comments.
Is there any question from the board? Doesn't look like it. Felice, roll call, please.
Augie Beltran,
Aye.
Frank Altamira,
Yes.
Ronnie Cobos,
Yes.
Miguel Galarza,
Yes.
Susan Grandella,
Yes.
Jim Wayne,
Yes.
Mary Tucker,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you very much, Felice. We now go to item G. We're now update, discussion, and possible action to amend 2019-2021 legislative strategic plan objectives. We're now on page 285 of your packets. Chief is going to update us on the legislative division strategic plan, as well as provide an update on what's changed that the committee may need to vote on. Go ahead, Chief.
Thank you, Chair. So the Legislative Division Strategic Plan is on 285 and 286. And some of the committee members are familiar with these objectives, but we have some new committee members, so I will go through these quickly. Item 3.1, this is just a good general policy for the Legislative Division to have, which is collaborate with industry and consumer leaders annually, and we do it more often than annually to get the pulse of what's going on and come up with any legislative changes or legislative things that need to be discussed. We do that regularly. Item 3.2, this item was discussed as one of the 3 measures that CSLB will be seeking sponsorship for in 2021. That is legislation to mandate workers' compensation insurance for specified license classifications. So this measure will be updated if we're successful with that legislative proposal. Item 3.3, review disaster-related consumer protection laws, including the hazardous substances certification requirements. There's kind of 2 prongs here. In SB 1189, which successfully enacted our B2 residential remodeling contractor's license, we were able to talk to the author about getting some disaster-related consumer protections in there. So that's a little bit of a win for this legislative strategic plan item. But in addition, this also relates to the hazardous substances certification requirements. That goes back to a very specific statute in CSLB law. I think it's 7058.7 or one of those that goes back to the 80s that relates to underground storage tanks. It allows CSLB to issue a certification for licensees that dig into the earth and remove a material that is flagged as hazardous, but the statute is really narrow. It relates to dig sites that are flagged by specified agencies for CSLB authority to even come in. This strategic plan item we'll look at that and find out whether this is still serving its job or we need to maybe expand hazardous substances certification. Take a look at these hazardous substances issues. And we are working on that. The testing division just finished a study on that, which I will be reviewing with the licensing chief soon. Item 3.4, the multiple qualifier responsibilities. Anybody who wants to dig into this heavily, the bond study discussed this issue on page 29 of the bond study. Basically, we have the license bond, which we all know about, the $15,000 license bond, but there's also a license qualifier bond. It wasn't raised up to $15,000. It probably should have been. So the bond study addresses that because it's currently at $12,500. But also there are some enforcement concerns around a licensee having or a qualifier being on multiple licenses and not being able to execute their qualifier responsibilities. So this strategic plan item takes a look at that, and we think we're going to address some of those concerns with the bond study. Item 3.5, clarify the home improvement contract requirements. There is a pretty lengthy and hefty area of law in the construction, in the contractor state license law. It is Article 10 of the Division 3, Chapter 9 of the Business Professions Code that deals with the home improvement contract requirements. And there's lots of notices and requirements for home improvement contracts and service and repair contracts that are in that section of law that are old. Some of them are old, and they could use some updating to be more clear. The notices need to be separated out so consumers and contractors know what's in front of them, and possibly the $750 limit for service and repair contracts, which allows a contractor, which takes away a 3-day right to cancel once the contractor starts work on specified projects. Possible that $750 needs to be raised. So we are looking at this extensive area of law to make it more clear, and we hope to have some bullets for what those ideas will be coming up here in this coming months. Item 3.6, we are currently looking for an author for this. So this was discussed earlier among the measures that CSLB is looking to sponsor this year, the measure to increase civil penalties. Item 3.7, this is the one item that we'll be asking the committee to vote on today. We struck the word regulatory on page 286, and we're changing it to statutory with the committee's permission. That's because regulations are a lengthy project. They take sometimes 2 years to complete, and CSLB has a number of regulatory projects that are in the works right now. And this can be done, we think, a lot quicker and more effectively and clearer for contractors in statute. So with the committee's permission, the chair might ask for a motion to change that to statutory. And then 3.8, this is addressed in the fee study. Past board chair Kevin Albanese had an excellent recommendation some years back at one of our board roundtables to consider whether corporations should be charged more for renewals or fees, certain fees. They might be able to absorb it better than others, say sole owners. Well, the fee study gets into that pretty heavily. And the board, as you know, will be looking at the fee study in December. That is my update. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief. Do we have any public comment, Rick?
No public comment.
I don't see any board comment. So we're looking for a motion to authorize staff to change the description of the strategic plan item 3.7 from regulatory to statutory. Do I have a motion?
Motion. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Back to the public, Rick. Any questions?
No questions, no comment.
And I don't see anything from the board. Please take roll.
Audrey Beltran,
Aye.
Frank Altamira,
Yes.
Ronnie Cobo,
Yes.
Miguel Galarza,
Yes.
Susan Granzilla,
Yes.
Jim Wayne,
Yes.
Mary Tykert.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Felice. Well, we're on the agenda item that we've all been looking for today. Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn. Not everyone at once.
So
We have a motion and a second. Without exception, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Aye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.